Welcome back, guys. Thanks so much for joining us. My guest today needs no introduction. I'm super excited to have him on here. He is a 3-time Arnold Classic champion. He is also 4-time Mr. Olympia. He is an incredibly accomplished entrepreneur, and he has his own podcast now called the Cutler Cast, which you guys can subscribe to on Apple Podcasts or on YouTube. Please welcome the legend, Jay Cutler. How you doing today, sir?
Yeah, it's great to be on. It
is great to be on, man. I bumped into you at a party. I had been trying to get you on the podcast. You come up to me, and I'm just going to be honest with you, man. You go, hey, man, I love your podcast.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if I said it, but in my mind, I thought, shut the fuck up. There's no way. And then I was like, dude, you want to come on? He's like, yeah. And I was like, man, come on. You got to come on.
Yeah, man. I watched a few episodes and I was like, man, it's, you know, because of course I had known about you from all the days at the pool events and everything. And when I saw you had a podcast, you know, it was just, everything was just very smooth. I liked it. So
yeah.
A lot of cool guests, and you know, the women aren't bad.
Yeah, you like
either.
that. Okay. I'm doing it. I'm trying to do that. All right. Beautiful, man. So here's the thing. I didn't realize, and I watched probably 8 hours of your stuff in the last couple days. Growing up with 6 siblings, growing up in Massachusetts, and growing up on a farm, did you? I looked at. I saw your dad in one of the features that you did. Did you have any other athletes in the family that were just, you know? You mentioned being able to bench press 315 in high school without lifting weights.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. You know, my brothers. I have 3 older brothers, 3 older sisters. I'm the youngest of 7. So, what was unique about my family is, you know, we're all like really hard workers growing up on the farm, and my brothers got into concrete when I was 11. But my brothers were all athletes, but the funny thing is most of them didn't graduate high school, a lot of my siblings, because at the time they chose to go to work at a younger age. And, you know, my parents were separated when I was really young. I was 4. So my brothers and sisters really kind of watched over me, and kind of, you know, became kind of my role models for, you know, for life and everything that I did. So, you know, growing up with a 10-year age gap to my closest sibling, you know, they were just kind of, you know, taking care of me when my dad was at work, and my mom had moved to Florida, and, you know, my brothers were forced to go to work and kind of provide for the family in that sense.
Did you? I mean, were there any other freak athletes in the family? Anybody play college ball or anything?
No,
like that?
no one. No, like I said, no one really graduated, so they didn't.
Oh, so they didn't go to college.
I was the only. My sister and I, who are a year apart. Today is actually, she turns 50 today. We're the only ones that actually went to college, and my college didn't have football, and I was a football player. I was a track athlete, and I found bodybuilding at 18, but. You know, my brothers had great physiques, and I always kind of laugh because my dad's like 5'3" and 135 pounds at the time. So
that is what I noticed, man, when he's standing next to you, and I was just like, I mean, that you know, we talk about genetics a lot on this podcast, and that part is really crazy to me. I mean,
yeah, I think it comes from my mom's side. Yeah. So I had a pretty good structure, and if you look at bodybuilding, structure means a great deal.
Yes, for
you know how someone's shoulder width is, and you know, how the taper can be, and obviously the ability to put on a lot of muscle mass. So I was always an athlete, just, you know, from the time I was, you know, I have pictures flexing when I was 4 years old, 7 years old, 12 years old. And I took an interest in bodybuilding at 12. I started picking up books. And in high school, like I said, I just toyed with weights a little bit for football, but I started reading books at GNC when I was 16. And then I made a pact to kind of, I'm going to start bodybuilding on my 18th birthday, which was August 3rd, 1973. And I joined the gym, local Gold's Gym, and I've never looked back. So I guess, you know, going back to that whole thing, you talk about discovering bodybuilding. You saw a picture of Chris Dickerson. And then you saw that body type and you knew that's what you wanted. But here's the part that, you know, I played high school football, and we always remember the first guy who could bench 300. We always remember the first guy who could dunk a basketball in your high school. You were benching 315 without lifting weights in high school. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. I mean, listen, it may not be as much weight today, right? I think that 315 back, I mean, I went to a regional high school, and this was like 1,500 kids.
Yeah.
And I mean, even when I was, you know, a sophomore and junior, I mean, I was just the strongest kid. So when I got under the bench press and just, you know, pushed out weights, it was just easy for me to do. And I was only about probably 180 then. I graduated high school at 200, so.
That's still impressive.
Yeah.
Because after not lifting any weights and then being able to throw that up, I mean, that's
so
crazy.
We went to like high school competitions for football. They would have like a like kind of a powerlifting thing. We'd squat and deadlift and bench press, and I was always like the guy that could do the most at all these competitions.
And you played defensive tackle and running back.
I played defensive tackle and running back. Yeah, I was fullback.
Did you ever consider like a college? Because I know Phil talked to me about playing shooting guard at University of Denver, and then Ronnie Coleman played middle linebacker at Grambling State.
Yes.
Did you ever think about a college football career?
To be honest, I wasn't huge on the team sports.
Okay.
And that kind of, we can get into that a little bit with the mindset of being a bodybuilder, because you become very individual, and I really was kind of an introvert. And I think that's really how I got into weight training, because when you can implant yourself in the gym and you can, get in that zone and separate yourself from all things that kind of pull us away. And that's what I found best about training, was the therapy. Like, that's what I was great at. And I was individual with everything that I did. Not to say bodybuilding is strictly like, yeah, you're in the gym pushing yourself, but there's a lot of things on the outside. There's a lot of variables that make you successful.
Yeah. It seems like a meditation for you, because you mentioned you mentioned lifting without using headphones. And I know maybe back, 20, 30 years ago, that wasn't a big deal. Now you just don't see that. And you leave your phone in the car, which is another thing that I rarely see anybody do. They're doing it for the gram. You leave your phone in the car, and then you're lifting without headphones, and there's like a focus that you have that I think is lost on a lot of other people.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day before social media existed, there was no phones allowed training around me. To this day, even now, like when I go train currently, if I'm training with someone, I'll still put my phone away, but they'll have a phone, which I'd never allowed before, even people around me, just to film my social aspect of what I'm doing. But it was strict time away from reality. Yeah. And I think at 18, I was at a huge crossroad, because my brothers wanted me to take over the business, the concrete business. And I was like, okay, I'm graduating high school. What did I really want to do? I mean, I didn't know bodybuilding was a career. I said, you know what, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to go for criminal justice. That's what I was studying to become a police officer. So I almost did the criminal justice to get away from the family saying, okay, well, you're not doing anything, you take over the business.
So you don't have to go into concrete.
Yeah, so truthfully, that's why I went to college, and I ended up with an associate's degree. I did 2 years, and at the time when I graduated, with that 2 years, I won the Teenage Nationals, which made me the best teenager in the country at 19. I was just about 20. My birthday's in August each year, and I think I won in June, the Teen Nationals, so I was just about to turn 20. And I was able to become the best teenager in the country after 2 years of training. Like, that's crazy. Do
you consider doing maximum security, as a prison guard in maximum security after your degree in criminal justice? I mean,
that's what people did. I mean, whether it was, I applied, I didn't get the job. I think the goal was really to become a police officer, really.
Okay.
In the end.
I'm just trying to imagine you just being the strongest, one of the security
I think
guards.
that's why I chose that career too, because I was already developed. I mean, when I joined the gym at 18, I already had a decent physique, but I put on 50 pounds like the first 6 months of training. So I knew I had something different. And people would come up to me in the gym, and it's funny because I was that kid joining the gym on August 3rd, and by February the next year, people were coming up to me saying, "Hey, how do you get bigger? You know, how do you do this? How do you do that?" And I didn't know anything when I joined the gym. I just knew from the books, but having hands-on experience is a lot different from the books.
So I think the biggest, obviously the most impressive thing is the weight training, the bench press 500 pounds. Listen to Ronnie Coleman talk about squat. He could have squatted 850, all that kind of stuff. That's impressive. The eating though, man, the way you guys attack these problems from like a thermodynamic level, like the reading from all the things I've read about you, the eating is probably one of the most impressive things. Buying 140 pounds of chicken at one time and buying an entire cow.
Yeah, I bought a cow from the butcher. I mean, I had a local, I was living in a place called Spencer, Massachusetts, and I had a local butcher there. So I'd actually buy all the meat, and I would have 2 freezers. So what I would do is I'd buy, the chicken, and I would break it all down into like 2-pound bags, and I would freeze it. And then I would have the cow where I would take, the cow would be hanging in like the butcher place. And I would say, I want this as steaks, this is hamburger. And I would do the same thing. I'd put it in like 2 pounds. And then each day I would take out like some chicken and some steak. That's pretty much all I ate, and besides eggs. So when I had the eggs, I went to a local farm stand, and I bought 30 dozen eggs at a time.
Because you do 20 at a time in the
20
morning.
egg whites, yeah.
20 egg whites at once.
Yes.
This is incredibly impressive to me. Like, to me, because a lot of people look at it and they're like, oh, you know, you mentioned this on the Greg Doucette podcast, which I thought was terrific. They think if I take twice as much gear, I'll get twice as strong. That's not the case. The food you eat is freaking incredible.
The food is everything.
Yeah.
And even to this day, like, you know, I've retired now and, you know, I haven't competed for 8 years. And I weigh about 230.
Yeah.
But when this was all going on, I was 270 plus. I mean, even at 20 years old, I was 270. So the food, you know, I was eating 6-7 times a day. I was eating upwards to 4 pounds of meat a day pretty consistently. And, you know, it was just every 2 hours like clockwork.
Your GI tract is incredible. It's probably the most impressive part of this whole thing, man.
I mean, that's, you know, the thing is that I think like we talk about genetics and, you know, it definitely, I mean, I spent a lot of time in the toilet, let's put it that way, man, you know.
Okay, so 20, you would do 20 whole eggs more than once a day. I mean, I guess what I'm at, you mentioned before, you eat 7 times a day. You're only hungry for 2 of them. What is the mental thing you're going through to get this food down, man?
Mr. Olympia.
Yeah?
Mr. Olympia, like you looked at guys like Dorian Yates.
Yeah.
Ronnie Coleman was like my hero. Eventually became my rival, right? And there's so many greats. I mean, you looked at all the former Lee Haney, who was before Yates, and I mentioned Chris Dickerson when I first started, and I mean, of course, Schwarzenegger, right? He won 7.
Yeah.
But all you think about is like, you know, what the books tell you. The magazines told me you have to eat to grow, and I think that's really what drove me. I wanted to be successful.
Yeah.
And I wanted to succeed, like build the ultimate physique. I mean, what people don't realize is like bodybuilders are more like artists, right?
Yeah.
So we look in the mirror, we use the mirrors to judge how our training is and when we're trying to develop body parts. And I always judge my workouts by how great the pump was.
Yeah.
And you heard Arnold talk about in pumping iron, like the pump and everything. So of course, you know, you try to get as much expansion of the muscle as you can, but then you realize you have to feed it in order to, you know, get those fibers to repair and, of course, get the volume of the muscles.
I read one in Schwarzenegger's biography, there was one time where he continued to eat steak until he weighed 275. He was not going to stop. Like within the course of a day or two, he was like, I'm going to continue to eat until this thing happened. It was just crazy.
Yeah, and listen, their diets, I mean, it's gone way more scientific now. I mean, they were drinking whole milk and like eating a lot more dairy products then. They didn't have the science or the knowledge that we have today. Yeah,
that's pretty incredible, man. Like some of those stories, again, the 20 whole eggs, the entire cow, the 140 pounds of chicken, and then you see you're constantly eating whenever you're doing this stuff. And you even mentioned before, it's like even when you come to do a podcast, like I got to make sure that I got to eat beforehand just so I can make it through this.
Yeah,
this
I mean
period.
it was 2 hours, so it was a clock. And you mentioned, you know, how hungry were you? I mean, I would, you know, I always said I would eat at least 3 meals hungry wise. But it seemed like, you know, as the metabolism got bigger, when you build more muscle, you need more fuel.
Yeah.
And that's really what kept me driving to, you know, of course, the food got more and more as my body weight climbed. And eventually that body weight was maximum 310. You know, I competed closer to 260, but, you know, that would be a phase I'd go through for 20 weeks to rip down and get down to body fat and be able to compete with the best.
I can just still see you like a 290-pound fullback. You know, what's the fullback for the Ravens? He's 300. You know what I'm saying? He's 5'10", 300, and I thought like that'd be a real interesting thing. So, 19, you end up winning that championship, the team nationals. At that point, there's a couple other stories I think they're incredible. The one about you squat till your nose bleeds. That is, can you explain that? Because listen, man, I've squat pretty hard, but not till my nose bleeds.
Yeah, so we had this squat rack at this Gold's Gym. It's in Worcester, Massachusetts, and you know, there was this mirror in front of the squat rack, and basically the whole mirror was like either spit or blood. You know, well, you know, we would squat until we thought it was the coolest thing ever. I mean, when you put 500 pounds on there and you're forcing reps out. Remember, I had only been training like less than 2 years, so we would squat, and I mean, if your nose didn't bleed, you weren't doing it proper. I mean,
Jesus, man.
I mean, it was crazy.
That is crazy, man. Your nose is bleeding. Yeah. I just can't even like.
And my legs were my strong point. So when I first started training, I actually had to back down my leg training.
You said 3 years you didn't work on your legs so that your upper body would catch up.
And that was, you know, even football. I remember even in high school having trouble fitting jeans in my thighs just because of the shape. And once I started training, those thighs developed. I had such a quad sweep, and that's usually the hardest body part to build.
Yeah.
And I was a huge squat. I mean, I think I squatted 700 at 19. And, you know, it was just genetically a gift for me. And I've been known as, you know, one of the best bodybuilder legs of all time.
Yeah. These are crazy numbers. Maybe you don't appreciate them, but you understand, like, less than 1/10 of the 1/100 of the population will ever bench press 500 pounds.
Yeah.
Right. And then you were able to do when
550 for 2 is what my max was.
When were you able to bench 550?
This was my early 20s, because then I got a little smarter and realized that, holy shit, I have a career. I need to be careful with, you know, how I train. Because remember, bodybuilding, like, we're sitting here talking about these stats.
Yeah.
But it's all illusion, right? So like I mentioned, as being an artist, and we're judged on our symmetry, proportions, muscularity, definition. So they don't ask you on stage how much we bench to get there squatted, right? And, you know, we talk about the Ronnie Coleman stories where he squatted 800, and his biggest regret is he didn't do
850.
Yeah, well, he did 2. I think he did 2 reps with 800.
And he said it was easy, and he wished that he had done more.
Yeah.
That it was, listening to that is just crazy, man.
Yeah. And, you know, so for us, you know, I needed to be smarter to have more of a lengthy career. And bodybuilding is a lot like the running back position in football, where you're very limited. Like, you're not supposed to go more than a few years being at the top. It's just that now, like, there's certain athletes that can actually carry a lengthy career. And I was fortunate to be one of them, you know, that was able to be top 2 in the world for 12 years.
The reason why is the degeneration of the joints, or is it because of the anabolics? Like, what is the thing that causes it to be shorter?
I just think that, you know, the drive, the ambition, the physique starts to take, you know, scar tissue happens, injuries, because let's be real. I mean, we're talking and bragging about these weights. Without those weights, I feel you can't get certain proportions.
Yeah.
I mean, Phil Heath he's probably one of the most genetically gifted guys. He came after me, but he still trained heavy and hard, and he stayed injury-free for most of his career. I mean, I ended up with a bicep tear at the very end, but I was able to maintain very healthy, you know, performance through that whole career. The
2011 years when you had the bicep tear, when the first time Phil Heath won, what did you notice? What did you feel that I've never heard you specifically talk about what happened.
What happened is I did what I did my whole career since I started. So I was doing dumbbell presses. So I basically had the dumbbells like you would, and I went up to do shoulder presses, which is standard. Yeah. And this was for a photo shoot. I was 3 weeks out, and next thing you know, when I kicked it up, my bicep tendon detached from my shoulder, which I didn't realize. I thought I just drained something. So I threw him down, and I said, it kind of stung a little bit. And went back to go doing the photo shoot, because this was 3 weeks off.
This is a complete severing of the tendon.
Yeah, it detached, and I noticed some swelling the next couple of days, and I just rolled with it. I mean, I was Mr. Olympia at the time, and showed up on stage, and of course, you know, by that time, once I drained the water out and, you know, put the dye on the tan and everything, and put some oil, you could see that the bicep had rolled down. There was a bump, but it was detached and it was swollen. So that didn't help. Besides, Phil Heath was phenomenal that day, and he deservingly should have won. Probably would have been hard for me to retain that title with the way he looked. That was probably the best look he ever had. But I finished second at that contest, and then I never won after that.
Phil won 6 more after that.
He did,
and I interviewed him after 3 of those. That was pretty awesome. Let me ask you, your pain tolerance. So I think this is something I haven't really heard you talk about, but I also think, like, you've just been you your whole life, playing football, lifting weights. You obviously, for most of us, if we have a detached tendon in our bicep, we're fucking done for weeks. We're not going to the hospital. And you didn't even notice it. Do you think that all of this weight training has caused it, or you just genetically in a situation? Because a lot of times some guys are football players, like Ray Lewis probably has a much higher pain tolerance than most people. Do you think this is something that's genetic, or do you think it's just something over time you've just developed?
Yeah, I think it's mind over matter, but at the same time, like, we do tend to push off things that might be wrong, right? Yeah. Because we push ourselves to the pain zone every time we train. Like, you know, for someone on the outside, I mean, you weight train, so you know, someone that doesn't weight train, they don't understand. Like, when you go in the gym and, like, you push and, like, to the point where it's painful, right? Yeah. So I can't do any more reps, because either you fail or it burns so much that you just say, okay, that's enough. So you have to have that balance. And for me, I think with the deep muscle tissue and as much muscle mass as I had, remember that was the biggest I ever was. I was probably 280, you know, super lean, probably 5% body fat when that happened. I wasn't aware that how serious the injury was, but I also think that it wasn't, you know, the normal bicep where it rolls from the bottom.
Yeah.
From the upper portion, it's a little different of a tear, although I did end up having surgery 5 months later. And the funny thing is I couldn't have surgery after the contest because I had so many committed appearances.
Right.
I was guest posing. So what we do in the off season, you know, we book these appearances. I couldn't cancel. I didn't want to be in a sling or anything. So I just waited, and I had the surgery in February. So I tore it in September, and I had the surgery in February of the next year. And then of course I sat out that Olympia. Phil Heath won his second. And then I came back in 13. I finished 6th, you know, for his 3rd victory. Well,
let's go back to the beginning. You finished second to last the first time you did Olympia, and one of the things that I also think is incredible is the idea of the times that you were going up against Ronnie Coleman and then beating him. And you mentioned going from, well, I think you went 15th to 8th to 2nd.
Yeah, 15th to 8th to 2nd, and by the time I got to the 2nd, you know, place at, you know, to Ronnie Coleman for the first time, that was 2001. It was after 9/11 happened, so we weren't even sure. And the first year, it was in Las Vegas. Was the first year I got second to last.
And this is the year you moved to Las Vegas too, right?
So the first year the Olympia was here at Mandalay Bay was 99.
Okay.
And then in 2000, I got 8th at Mandalay Bay, and then I placed 2nd in 2001. But they weren't sure if the show was going to happen because Vegas was on a huge alert because of terrorist stuff. So we ended up there, and then, of course, I moved the next year to Las Vegas, 02. I came after 9/11. I came out here actually as a real estate investor. I didn't come here just because the Olympia was here. I saw the opportunity. I was living in California at the time. I had migrated from Massachusetts to California to be closer to Joe Weider's magazine's Flex, Muscle, and Fitness, because at the time that was our only publicity. So I was able to shoot year-round with the books, and I was living in Orange County, and I came out here just on a whim to visit, and I was at the time looking at property in California, over $1 million for a house. I currently had a condo at that time, and then I saw this beautiful home in Summerlin, and Summerlin was this master community, and I saw the opportunity, so I ran here. But that's you know, that's where it kind of all started. And then I took, you know, 2002 off from the Olympia. I won the Arnold that year. You know, I won 3 Arnolds in a row, and won. You know, that was the second biggest prize. I won Hummer trucks and Rolex watches and prize money, and then I just started flipping real estate and still getting involved with all sorts of stuff.
One of my Longhorn brethren, Mark Henry, he won.
The same first year.
Yeah.
02. Yeah, we won the Hummers together, the first H2 Hummers.
I used to bump into him in the archery area downstairs, because when I was going to UT Austin, he would come back and visit every once in a while. I think he was trying out archery or something weird like that. I can't remember.
He's a beast.
He is a monster. That guy is a very, very strong individual. So can you talk about this? We skipped over this. Joe Weider kind of discovering you. What makes, so I guess from my standpoint, what makes Joe Weider decide I want Jay Cutler as opposed to someone else? What is the thing?
Well, Joe Weider is like he's the godfather. Of course, right? He brought Schwarzenegger from Austria. So I was like reading his books. I mean, he owned Muscle and Fitness and Flex, and he owned everything pretty much. Golf Digest, you know, end up Shape magazine, and for me, I got the chance to meet Joe Weider for the first time when I was 22. So I came out to compete in California at a local contest because I wanted to get publicity. So Massachusetts, we weren't really noticed.
Yeah.
So I said, you know what, I want to go out to California. I want to be closer to the books, where if I do well, I can get some publicity and maybe get featured. And I realized at this point I had started like a small mail order selling T-shirts and 8x10 photos and stuff like that. So I was trying to build, you know, my reputation in the bodybuilding circle. So I flew out to California to compete in this show, Tournament of Champions. This was 1995, and I, you know, had all these magazine shoots lined up. And I remember someone had touched base with Joe Weider, and they said if he wins the contest, I'll put him on the cover of Muscle and Fitness. And at the time, Muscle and Fitness was like, if you were on the cover of Muscle and Fitness, like you won the lottery, right? Because you were on every shopping store, you know, news aisle, everything. So I won the show, and I had the opportunity to meet Joe like midway through the week after. I remember walking in his office for the first time, and he looked at me, and at the time I was like blonde hair, you know, and he just was like, I want to sign you, you know, I want to put you in a magazine cover. And I said, okay, you know, so we shot my first Muscle and Fitness. I landed that I was 22 years old. And next thing you know, he was kind of asking me, hey, come to California. I could utilize you more. And basically he took me under his wing to promote me, and he got me to move to California when I was 25. I waited until I was 25. But.
Well, speaking of which, and actually, let's keep and go further back. You met your wife when you were 16.
16.
How old were you when you got married?
I was 24, and I got married in Las Vegas, which was crazy.
Really?
Yeah.
Where was this?
The Rio.
The Rio.
Yeah.
There you go. That's nice. So I know a lot of guys who are, you know, high performers. They do get married early because that whole part of their life is settled, and they understand that she was also a big part of your early career in training.
Yeah, I mean, I remember with her, like, I mean, I told her on our first date when we were 16. You know, I said, hey, I want to be a bodybuilder, and she kind of was like, yeah, you know, you don't know what bodybuilding is. And it was kind of funny because I didn't start till 2 years later. And, you know, you always need some sort of support system. And she, you know, she was always there. And you know, kind of, I said, even at 18, when I joined the gym, I said, if you want to see me as much, you know, you're going to have to join the gym to spend, you know, we were training 8 to 10 at night. And, you know, she was a big backbone to the success because we spent a lot of nights in the home, you know, training, eating, sleeping. I mean, that's pretty much the life of a bodybuilder. It's not, it doesn't go, I call it a boxy lifestyle because you can't really do a lot.
Yeah.
Like your social life is pretty much nothing. Because
you can't miss certain appointments, and you can't miss training, and you can't miss eating.
Yeah, I mean, when I mentioned, you know, you were talking the cows and I was training twice a day. You know, I was training, you know, in the morning, in the afternoon, doing 2 body parts a day. You're on a rigorous schedule. I mean, I wasn't paid directly to do that on a clock, but I treated it like a clock.
Right.
Like I was up every morning at 6 and I was in bed at 9 every night, and I got, you know, 8 to 10 hours of sleep at night, and I was just, you know, full force being a bodybuilder.
In 01, so let's go back to that. You mentioned you get second to Ronnie Coleman, and you said that's the first time you realized you could win Mr. Olympia. What is that like? Because you don't win until 06, so we have 5 more times of you finishing second every one of those times. Is it the
same guy?
Is it the same guy? Now, what is that like? Because that's an interesting part. Because most people don't even get to second, right? And now here you are in this situation, and you feel like you're beating your head against this thing. What is this mindset like?
You know, when I got second, it was really tough for me because, you know, I moved up from almost last to halfway through the pack. Yeah. There's only like 16 guys that ever qualify for Olympia each year. So, you know, when I was almost dead last, and then the next year I moved up halfway to 8th, and then to move to second, I mean, at the same time you're ecstatic because all of a sudden you're like, okay, you're in that final call, but like I'm against Ronnie Coleman, who was, like I mentioned, an idol of mine. Like I read about Ronnie Coleman in the books, and I mean, even my first pro victory in 2000, I won the Night of Champions. He called me and told me, hey, congratulations, before the show ended, and I won. And I always had a lot of respect for him. So when I was able to stand on stage with him, you know, and finish second, I was like, man, like, I'm this close.
Yeah.
And on the big stage, too, I was in, you know, we were at Mandalay Bay. I mean, it was the place. I mean, the show was in Vegas, and I realized then, wow, I can actually do this.
At this point, you're making an income from appearances. Like what is the majority? Endorsements. The majority. I always wondered the income for a bodybuilder at this point. And then my other question is, how far down the line are you? Is the guy making 8th? Is this his full-time career, or is he working a second job? Is the guy in 10th place? Like how far down are we doing this before?
It was a bit individual because everyone had different ability to be in condition at certain times of the year. I mean, listen, I was able to move to California. Joe Weider moved me there to be like the guy in the book. So obviously they were utilizing me a lot more than they might be utilizing a guy that lives in New York or Florida. I mean, I came there specifically. So my income was pretty substantial. But now, of course, I'm in the money too, right? The prize money. I mean, at that time it was only $60,000 for second place.
Just for people to understand, I think it's around 400,000.
It's 400 for first, yeah. So, I mean, even at my peak, I mean, my best year winning Olympia, I won 200,000. But the prize money wasn't really. It was in the endorsements, the appearances, the merchandising, and it wasn't just like one contract. Like you could have. I mean, I had 14 paid endorsements at my peak. So I was like the guy, you know, and that's what the magazines really did for me because the publicity was worldwide. And that's the thing about bodybuilding is like people think, oh, is it recognizable? But overseas, we're like rock stars.
Right. Like track athletes, how they're more popular over there. Yeah.
I mean, because you don't have the mainstream sports there, right?
Yeah.
It's like bodybuilding, and they have cricket and soccer, right?
Yeah.
What they call football, but it's just they don't have as the basketball and football and all that. American football.
Yeah, that part's pretty crazy. So, how many guys do you think are making a living at one time? Because it feels like, I mean, there might be like 20 or 30 guys, but or is it hundreds of guys?
No, there was quite a few at that time. I mean, Joe Weider had a whole roster.
Okay.
And
the reason why I'm asking is because only 16 guys make Olympia. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, so a lot, like, it means top 10 of those guys probably are making a decent living.
Yeah.
But that decent living in today's standards, remember, this is over 20
yeah,
years
for
ago,
sure.
pretty much. It's not that, I mean, a couple $100,000 if if you're making a good salary, and back then,
but
that
to
was
do what
pretty
you
decent
love,
money. Yeah, I
to
mean,
do what
you
you
were
love.
paid to lift weights.
Yeah.
So I never looked at it as like, listen, honestly, if I could afford the gym membership and the food and afford an apartment and a crappy car, I was okay with it. That was a crazy thing because I just love to train.
That must be an amazing feeling, getting paid really well to do something. Like when you see, Pat Mahomes getting $500 million to play football, which clearly he loves to do, or an NBA player, first time Michael Jordan was getting $35 million a year for the Bulls. And this is 20 years ago, 25 years ago, he's getting $35 million a year to play for the Bulls. When you think about that, the transition to that must be a pretty incredible feeling.
Yeah, but it was just like a bonus for me because I never expected to make that kind of money. And, people look at me now as like, oh, Jay's one of the more successful, if not the most successful guy that bodybuilding has brought forward. But I never really thought about the money. And anytime I went to the gym, I remember winning Olympias and being like, oh yeah, I have this check for, $150 or $200K also.
You forgot to cash it?
You don't, it's just, you just don't, you don't think about, you don't do it for the money. You don't do it for the notoriety. You do it because like you work your ass off and it's like, okay, what is the benefit of this?
Yeah.
I remember people would see me in the gym and they're like, man, like, what do you get out of this?
Yeah.
But when you're just driven and you start at 18 and your dream is to reach the pinnacle of what you do, like to be the best in the world at something, my dad used to be like, man, I can't believe the work ethic you have.
Yeah.
And he got disappointed because I would be second, and I remember the first year that I won, 2006, he was there and he's like, call me from Massachusetts. He's like, listen, I'm coming out, but are you going to win this year or what?
Really?
Yeah.
Your dad saying that?
Yeah, because it got old, man. 4 times in a row, I got second to Coleman, and I said, this is the year. This is the year I'm going to win it. And I kind of knew I was going to.
Yeah.
And, and he was going for record 9 at the time, right?
Yeah.
Ronnie was a beast. He won 8 in a row. I mean, tied record with Lee Haney. That's the most ever.
Yeah.
And, so it gets frustrating, but at the same time, it's like, man, how many people can say they're the best in the world at something? Like, there's no, like this.
Jay, how many people can say they're second best in the world at something?
But, listen, we can talk about who's the greatest basketball player. It's still like, is it LeBron or is it,
Michael Jordan?
Michael Jordan. I mean, I don't know. I mean, people now say, okay, LeBron's got the stats, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he just broke all these records, but he's played a lot longer, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Gavin actually wanted me to ask you about your Jordans. You like the basketball shoes?
Yeah, I wear a lot of ones. Yeah.
Yeah? You have
a lot of people follow me for my shoe collection, actually.
Yeah, so tell me about your shoe collection.
I don't even collect them. I wear them. That's a crazy thing. But I have a whole closet. Like, I have 4 walls. And Angie, it's my fiance. She's like, she's got a little section.
Yeah.
For her shoes, and it's like, here's all my Jordan ones.
Do you prefer weight training in Jordans, or is there a certain type of shoe?
No, I actually have a shoe endorsement with a shoe company called Atomic. So it's more of a workout shoe. So I don't know if you've seen like the shoes that have a very small sole on it.
Yeah.
So you can you see a lot of people training barefoot now when they train legs and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So these shoes they allow you to feel the weight a little more. And those are the kind of shoes I actually train in. But, when I wear the Jordan ones in the gym, which I do from time to time, I get a lot of the social media people yelling at me saying, don't crease the J's.
Yeah, don't crease the J's.
Crease J's.
I've been lifting in basketball shoes my whole life because I mix in basketball for cardio.
Yeah.
I can't stand straight line cardio. I have to go run up and down on the court. Having a basketball or football in my hand makes the cardio running routes makes it so much easier to do cardio, just being on a treadmill. What kind of cardio do? You talk about you have to do, you'll have one cardio session. Is it just a treadmill?
I do everything. So I walk outside.
Okay.
I have a step mill at my house. I have a treadmill, elliptical, bike, sit down bike. I have it all pretty much. I don't do like rowing or anything, but preferably for bodybuilding contests, believe it or not, the stairs were the best thing. The rotating stairs, because you're working more of your backside, your glutes and hamstrings, that tie in, and that's so important these days.
Yeah.
If you asked any of the top Olympia champions to this era, including Phil Heath, Ronnie, myself, and probably, Big Rami, all these guys, we did a lot of stairs.
Okay.
For conditioning.
For a certain cardio workout, what are your goals for a certain cardio workout? How many calories?
I don't necessarily have a calorie set or a heart rate. It's basically on a time schedule. Okay. So for Mr. Olympia, most of us do 2 sessions a day. So we usually do fast in the morning. I think the ideal time to do your cardio is first thing in the morning, empty stomach.
Okay.
Or after the weight training session, or at night, like before you go to bed or whatever, just to increase your metabolism. That's the whole goal of cardio. It's not like, I know you can get on the machines and you can say, I burned 500 calories.
Yeah.
Ideally, what you want to do is you want to continue to boost your metabolism. So that's why you do these consistent workouts. And I mentioned also I train several times in a day where I'm hitting the metabolism. That way I can, maintain the eating capacity, but also I can, keep body fat as lean as possible and put on muscle tissue at the same time.
Has your belief, your strategy with regard to reps changed through your career? I've heard you say heavy weights is how you build muscle, and you go around 8 to 12. What reps has that changed over time?
Yeah, and that's a pretty broad range. Like you mentioned, 8 to 12. And I think for bodybuilding, you hear power trainers do like 1, 2, 3 reps. Mm-hmm. Bodybuilding is more of a 8 to 12 repetition. And that means like, I don't go much below 8, but my maximum is usually 12. Not to say I don't go to 15 or 20 reps sometimes.
Yeah.
But my sweet spot, if you watched me train even now, is around 10 repetitions. And why?
How many sets are we talking?
I would do 20 sets per body part. So I would pick like 5 or 6 different movements to hit from different angles. And I was a high volume trainer. I think ideally, if I was to say, okay, Mike, you want to work out, I would focus on 9 total sets. So if you're going to do chest, I'd say do, bench press, a fly movement, and then like some sort of like a pec deck or something like that. So 3 sets each.
So these are 9, 3 sets each of the 9. So we're talking 27 sets total.
But I do about 20 total. So I do 3 sets per exercise.
Okay.
So I would do like
3 sets of 12 per exercise.
Yeah.
Okay, because I didn't understand the 20 sets part of it. That part's crazy.
So I would do at least 3 or 4 sets per X. So if you're going to do a flat bench, I would do it for 3 or 4 sets of 12 reps.
Yeah.
Then I would move to like an incline press. Do the same, and then kind of switch it around depending on the day. And people like to switch the routine, but truthfully, I don't really switch up what I do.
Yeah.
Because after 20, 30 years of doing this, what kind of works, right?
Yeah.
You're kind of limited, especially the people that train at home because of pandemic or whatever else. Your gym is only so equipped, right? So whether it's dumbbells, barbells, cables, now you have a lot of machines that mimic a lot of those things. I didn't have that in the beginning, so I was a free weight pusher. It was really just kind of whatever worked the best for me. And to this day, I still train with a lot of free weights. I don't have any injuries that hinder that or any aches and pains, which is crazy.
You did mention once about an injury to the shoulder. Was this from
the
shot?
bicep? Yeah.
Yeah. What? No. There's another one that you had with the shoulder. What was
that? Was
from?
an injection I had, which obviously with performance enhancing, it's necessary at the Olympia level. So I did get an infection, and I competed. That week, but I had obviously retention, water retention.
This is an abscess from like an air bubble, or like what?
No,
is it?
It's just abscess from like just a bad shot. So like it just didn't sit well in the muscle. It got infected, and next thing you know, I was had to take antibiotics.
Is that the only time you've ever had that happen?
Yeah.
Okay, because that's something I've been worried about. I recently started on TRT about 2 years ago, and that's always something. Because Vegas Dave was on here, and he thought he almost had an abscess get to one of his arteries, and he would have had to lose his leg, and that's always something I've been
and sometimes it's like, okay, what are you taking that does that? But unfortunately, it was a thing called Winstrol, which is a water based compared to like oil is like testosterone or whatever else. So when I was taking that water-based, it's very prone for infections, but it also it helps with, cutting up the last few weeks.
Sure.
I mean, that's why a lot of guys would use a substance like that.
So just to bridge to that, you did an interview with Greg Doucette, and you were very transparent about the cycles you did before and the cycles that you did in the off season. My first question is, so first of all, I think it's incredibly useful that you did that. I think it's beneficial to a lot of people that you came out and talked about this, because there's a lot of unhealthy abuse when it comes to this kind of stuff. And you and Greg were both mentioning there are guys who are just not even competing, taking more than you guys were ever taking, because they think the more gear I take, the more results I'll get, the bigger I'll get. And so I think it's interesting. You mentioned before at one point, I think the thing that was the craziest. So first off, you mentioned taking insulin and then stopping at 2014. I'm curious, when you're taking something, you're like, I need to stop doing this. What was the sign that you got? I need it, because you also mentioned clenbuterol. You took that for a while and you didn't like it. What are the signs that make you stop taking something?
You know, it's a trial and error type thing. There's no one that has the exact recipe to become the best at what you do, or, you know, we all try to push limitations, and listen, it's choice, right? Yeah. So in no way do I condone, like, this is what you should do. Right. I just, you know, I did a lot of trial and error, just like I did with the training and the foods I ate. And I mentioned, you know, we all reached for certain levels, right? So there was only so much you could do without, you know, with just straight, you know, steroids in your protocol. Yeah. And then of course it leads to growth hormone, which, you know, became popular. And then insulin, which you mentioned, you know, I did use some insulin on and off from basically 2001 to 2000. I stopped in 04.
In 04, sorry.
And then I won the Olympia in 06. So it just shows that, you know, I did use it. I did try it. I did not like what it necessarily did to the skin layer, meaning, like, I thought it thickened the skin a little bit.
Got it. Okay. So I was wondering, what's the physiological reaction?
Yeah. So I think I think you can put on a lot of size, and listen, it's a very complicated thing, people that take insulin, because obviously you have to have food around it, and you have to be, you know, smart about your blood sugar. Yeah. Right? You have to test your blood sugar. But, you know, in all this time I was watched over by, you know, some sort of doctor supervision or someone that, you know, definitely knew more than I did. Not to say that I didn't abuse. Like, I was I was very transparent, where I felt like anything over a TRT dose is abusing, right? Yeah. But, you know, there's certain things that just protocols that work. Sure. And it's just like now with the doctor's supervision, like, so much testosterone, it seems to be like, oh, you know, I hear so many people say HRT is done like a cc of testosterone a week, right? Or they use like a cream, or but who's the, you know, everyone needs different dosages.
I don't think there's a doctor prescribing a full cc, is there? Or like, full.
It depends on what your levels are.
Okay.
So everyone is individual. Like, there's times where
I'm talking about 1,000 milligrams. Sorry.
No, like like a cc would be, you know, 200 milligrams.
Okay, got it. I'm sorry.
I don't know.
My conversion is incorrect.
So you know, you have to be. That's why the blood tests are important. Yeah. And, you know, I was just one of these guys. I mean, I just learned as it went. And I mean, that's why I talk about with Schwarzenegger's time, like, back then, you know, they didn't have the drugs that are available today, or we did have. Like, I can tell you, we had better drugs then than today. Yeah. You think they're better because today they're made? You mentioned before they're made in somebody's basement. Not all, but you know, it's very hard to tell what's real. Right. The internet has changed that game a lot. Where it's very easy for someone to say, I took this and it was amazing. You know, everyone's a salesman, right? Yeah. Everyone has the next best thing. So that's why I always say, you know, you should consult with a doctor. Correct. Yeah. And unfortunately, if you're under 25, it's going to be hard for you to go to your doctor and say, hey, I need testosterone. Your levels should be, I mean, my levels were normal until my early 30s. You know, I could come on and off steroids pretty easily and not have any kind of side effects, you know, and people to this day, they refuse to even do that. You know,
coming off at all.
They have this called bridging, where they stay on therapy, which that wasn't the case with many of us.
Well, here's the thing. When you're talking about training versus hypergonadism, for somebody who has hypergonadism, you would recommend they stay on or come off completely?
They would, you know, but remember, that's the doctor. Yeah. I mean, it's going to come down to what your testosterone levels are and what you're able to, and listen, there's people that have taken testosterone therapy and come off, and their body goes back to normal.
Yes.
Like the whole goal is to really get your body firing again. That's
Yeah.
what they have HCG for that or whatever else. But the problem is when you cycle on and off for years on end, it's almost going to be impossible for your body to kick back in.
Right.
And that was something that I had to be aware of when I first started, right? You know, around 20 years old or whatever, that I just not going to be able to, you know, I would have maybe that predicament.
Yeah.
And, you know, to this day, like I'm a healthy guy. I've never had, you know, any kind of blood work that was way off. I mean, liver enzymes were elevated. Never had high blood pressure. You know, my kidneys, everything was fine.
Yeah.
You know, I've never had those kind of issues that would scare me to the point where I need to stop doing this, right?
You mentioned probably the one that blew me away the most is at one point you were taking 12 IUs of growth a day, and you said you moved that down to 9. My first question is, where do you put 12 IUs of growth a day? You have a second refrigerator?
Well, no, it comes in a vial, right?
Yeah.
So usually it comes in a mixture of like 18. So what I would basically do is take, you know, little bits and pieces through the day.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, that's
you're
how
injecting
you
these.
Yeah, just in your stomach. You
Wow,
know,
man.
it's just in between the skin. So it's a little insulin needle, and you know, like I mentioned, I've gone up to those dosage, but the sweet spot was around 9.
Yeah.
I don't know what a doctor really would recommend. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4.
That's what I've heard. Yeah.
I mean, you know, guys taking, I'm sure,
For
that
sure.
much. You know what
I mean, I live in Las Vegas. I'm the last guy on TRT, just in case you didn't know. I am the last guy left. If I get any bigger, they're going to hire me at Wet Republic. So just out of curiosity, so you're taking this, but you said that was probably the least. If you could go back in time, that was probably the least effective thing was the growth.
You know, I got a lot of flack a little bit for that.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of feedback because, you know, it's easy for me to sit here and say, you know, the people look at, well, he won the Mr. Olympia, so how did it not work, right? But if I looked at the physique transformation, it was progressively, like I mentioned, I was 270 at 20.
Yeah.
And I mean, at that point, you know, I was taking, you know, a cc of testosterone a week.
Yeah.
So I mentioned I went to 300 pounds, but, you know, I mentioned insulin, I mentioned GH and all, but I think progression in the food and everything else, I would have got there. But I feel like for the money that you spend on something like that, because it is expensive.
Yes. The HGH, specifically for the audience, the HGH specifically is expensive. Like testosterone, synthetic testosterone, I believe, is made out of wild yams. It's very easy to produce. The HGH is very expensive.
Yeah, so, you know, back in certain eras, like it can become more or less expensive.
Yeah.
So I think people have this expectations. I hear too many people say, I was on GH and I was able to eat pizzas and burgers and I was still getting ripped.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't happen like that. So I think for people's knowledge, like if you're going to transition to that, you know, don't expect like this huge transformation. Everything comes down to, I still go back to the nutrition, the sleep patterns, and how you train.
Talking to guys about anabolics, it is the most confusing shit I have ever heard. You even mentioned about some people with the peptides. You don't even like. I can't even understand what half this stuff is. Can you explain? So you mentioned you really liked Equipoise. What was? So the only two things I hear people agree on is Anavar is okay and take a lot of testosterone. That's the only two things. Everything else, I know some people will not take estrogen blockers. I know some people who don't like HCG because it gives you acne or whatever, or changes your mood or whatever. The only two things I hear are Anavar and pretty much ubiquitous is testosterone and Anavar. What you said you liked Equipoise. There was stuff you didn't like. What caused that?
Equipoise is a red blood cell volumizer. So you want more increased red blood cells, just like you hear of this.
Well, Test does that also, right?
Yeah, but Anadrol 50 also is like a gainer's pill, right? So what you want as a bodybuilder is obviously the volumization, so you get the muscle fullness.
Yeah.
And Equipoise was used for horses.
Yeah.
So the actual
Equipoise. Nah, my bad. Sorry.
Equipoise was, you know. So we used to
means.
get these bigger bottles, and they were actually for veterinarian for the horses, and that's, you know, it also helped increase my appetite, and that's what I preferred at the time. I mean, the thing is with Anavar, like it's very safe even for the women. Somewhat they tend to use that, although I don't agree with it. It's just less potent. So it usually comes in an oral form, but it's not as hard on your liver and your kidneys and everything else. So that's why people say, oh, Anavar, it's just popular, right? I think they prescribe that also, a lot of the doctors. They're not giving out prescription on Equipoise,
right? Of course,
Trenbolone
or Masteron, or
got it. That's kind of like what we call exotics.
What is the line of delineation? Why is that I can get some doctors that give me Anavar, but I can't get Trem? What is the?
I think it's just controlled. They have
FDA.
advanced studies,
FDA stuff
on how these things perform, and I'm scared. Like I said, Trenbolone is a scary thing. It's you hear about I'm on Tren and it makes you aggressive, and it's very hard.
I've
you lose
seen
your hair on it.
Yes.
So for me, like I mentioned in that interview, which I also got a lot of flack for, is like I didn't really fuck with Tren much. I was basically what they called Parabone, and people say, well, it's the same thing. No, it isn't. It's not the same. What I was getting was totally different. It was a light dose compared to what these guys use for dosage in the Trenbolone world. And, Trenbolone is like, hey, you want to get aggressive, you want to get mean, you want to get ripped. Like that's what seems to be what people are using now. But I always tend to, try to steer people away from it.
If I gave you some power at the FDA, what things would you change? Would you make things more strict, less strict? What would you do different?
I mean, I think it's a good
the way it is now.
I really think testosterone is sufficient enough.
Yeah.
It's just that people's dosages go extreme.
Yes.
And I mentioned 500 mgs was like a normal cycle for me, but I know guys that have done 5,000.
That's it's crazy.
So, you say a cc, so you figure each syringe is 3 cc's, so that would be, that's 600 milligrams. So do the math. I mean, it'd be like almost 10 of those filled, that you'd have to take in a week's time.
That's crazy. Because I remember, so just for people who don't know, because there's a lot of confusion. There's probably over 10 million men on HRT now in the U.S., and a lot of people are confused when they hear test and then they think steroids. They think they're the same thing. They don't understand the difference. So I like to use the example of scurvy. Back in the 1850s, you'd have sailors and they'd have vitamin C deficiency and they'd be dying from vitamin C deficiency. When you don't have vitamin C is a miracle cure. And when you are 32 years old and your free test is in the 200s, testosterone is now a miracle cure. And I was going to wait to the end to talk about this, but you mentioned before about going to like an HRT doctor versus a urologist. You said like a regular doctor or whatever. I've actually had clients, overweight, like high pitched voice, no drive for anything. Go to urologist. Urologist said, well, yeah, you're 35, your test is 215. You're good. Your prostate's not swollen. You're good. And I'm like, why didn't you look at him and be like, I want to fuck my wife once in a while? Like, you know how many men? There's an epidemic of men over the age of 50 committing suicide. And when I hear that, I'm like, how is this urologist okay with this guy being at 200? What do you think about that?
You know what? Everyone has the different levels that they think are okay.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned, the last blood test I had, I was around 600, and my sweet spot would be 800.
Okay.
And you'd have some doctors that say, hey, that's too high. And then others that allow you to be over 1,000. I think 300 is like where they have that, okay, this is a normal level. But the truth is, and I think studies show that most guys over 35, their testosterone levels drop. And it really comes down to your diet, stress levels, everything, right? Genetics. So I think it's really important for anyone to go to have their free testosterone checked.
Yes.
Listen, everyone should be getting blood work at least once a year, at least. I choose twice a year. Do your checkups, your physicals, and, have these levels checked. I mean, have everything checked. I mean, in this day and age, I think as you get a little older, especially someone like me, I mean, your biggest fear is like you're watching some of your friends pass away at your young ages, consider young. I would definitely, be a little more,
careful about
it. Yeah.
Can we talk about that? Dallas McCarver, John Meadows, Sean Roden. What do you think is it a function of just abuse, or is what do you think is going on with some of these guys that? And by the way, professional wrestlers too. Like this is another situation. What do you think is going on with the mortality with some of these things?
I think a lot of fingers have been pointed at these guys. I mean, I think it's been known that the autopsy with Dallas McCarver, he had a genetic problem with his heart. With John Meadows, the same thing. Sean Roden, I don't know what his autopsy was even with that. I mean, he was 46, I think.
Yeah.
You know, you just have these instances, man, where it's like people just, you know, unfortunately pass at certain, you know, younger ages. And I know people want to pinpoint, you know, it's the steroids or the lifestyle, right? But I can't necessarily speak on that, you know, because listen, I was a guy that pushed levels through I'm 48 now.
You mentioned before when you were in your 20s, you'd give up your life at past 40 to win Mr. Olympia, and now obviously you've changed.
Which is so insane to me. But you hear this all the time, and I used to hear this with Olympic sports, and they said, you know, if I had to give up, you know, a portion of my life to win the gold medal, would you do it? And I think in our early 20s, we think that's normal, right? But as you get older, you realize that your time is the most important thing. So for me, you know, I was that thinker because I was so determined to be the best at what I did. And then I get there and I was like, wow, you know, there's so much life ahead of me.
Yeah.
And that's a scary thing.
So I think it's really important that you, of all people, express this. And I'm curious what made you, because you are a little bit more forthright in the Greg Doucette interview than I think you've been before, certainly while you were competing. What was the catalyst for you to decide? Or was it just a spur of the moment thing? Hey, man, I'm just going to talk about how much test I was taking for the first time. What was that about?
You know, it's been kind of like one of those things where people don't necessarily come straight out and ask you.
Yeah.
And as an athlete in the bodybuilding realm, a lot of our, like I mentioned, income comes from endorsements, and you're branded, and a lot of that was around nutritional products. So we endorse a lot of products, and for us, you know, we do advertisements like, hey, this is what works, right? To this day, I mean, I own a supplement brand, Cutler Nutrition, and you know, I have my pre-workout powders, my proteins, all that stuff is supplemented in with a great diet, but it's not the go-to answer. But I feel like since that interview, a lot of more respect has come forward to me because no one at my level really goes forward and talks about, you know, the ins and outs and really opinions on what worked and what didn't work. And I think, you know, you still have these people that question, well, was it really what he said? Because he was so successful at what he did.
Right.
And he's able to live on the other side now so successful.
This is why I brought up benching 315. As a teenage kid without lifting any weights, the genetic part of it added on with whatever you were taking.
Let's put it this way: like when I graduated high school and became, you know, the best bodybuilder in the world several years later, I don't think anyone in high school was surprised,
right?
Because I was always that guy. I mean, even in my high school yearbook, I mentioned I didn't necessarily lift weights, but it was like no pain, no gain was like one of my quotes in there, and I told you I was flexing at 4 and 7 and 12, and you know, I always had a great physique. So I think I was destined to be a bodybuilder. Now, I didn't realize what it took to get there. Number one, the diet. I didn't realize the drugs. I didn't realize the time, the effort, the consistency with the training. Like, I can sit here and say, without hard work and a tunnel vision and a hell of a mental ability, you can't be the best at anything that you do. And I think that's really... There's a lot of tools to get to a certain levels, right? And we're not one of these sports that necessarily is a drug tested.
Yeah. You mentioned 1 year because of the baseball that you had been drug tested.
They did drug tests.
How did that work out, by the way? What was that meeting like?
Never got the results. Just backstage, and I said, hey, you gotta pee in this container, and I had no issue with it because I honestly wasn't on any drugs.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, what is this for? And they're like, just do it, you know?
Yeah. That's crazy.
It's kind of like a protection thing. But, you know, we're not sanctioned in like the Olympics. And,
right.
And we didn't have like a union. So for us, it's like, you know, we were a cult, kind of a cult sport. So it was only covered by books, like, I mean, for a couple years on pay-per-view. But no one was really... the big sponsors weren't in there,
right? Like
Coca-Cola's or anything like that. So it's like, you know, it's kind of, you know, kind of a hidden thing. So we didn't have to abide by certain rules, right? We assessed us for diuretics, which were dangerous at the time, right? Sucking the water down. I mean, you probably know guys that take diuretics for pool parties.
Yes,
and stuff,
absolutely,
right?
yeah.
So that was really, they drug tested for that for a while, but that's not something that they do today.
Yeah, man, I say it again. If you have any doubt about this, I think it was so beneficial for a lot of people for you to do it. And as far as it being a secret, it's not a secret. I mean, obviously, nobody ever thought, even in his book, Schwarzenegger talks about taking steroids. So I don't think that was the issue. What do you think, though, when The Rock or Michael Hearn say that they're all natural? What does that, do you have any feeling about that?
You know, those things I don't really comment as much on because I understand the positioning of, like, everyone has their own position, and if they choose not to talk about it, I respect that. Because for a long time I did the same, right? I didn't come out and say I take this or that, and I kind of went into interviews knowing that many weren't going to ask, and the ones that I thought might, I was protected. Where, hey, don't blatantly ask me, hey, do you take this or that? Like, don't put me on the spot. And that's why, you know, I was limited on where I put my publicity. You know, and all the local news stations before the Olympia covered the event, but they didn't touch on that. Yeah. And I think it was kind of known, like, hey, don't ask these kind of questions. Right. But, you know, you have to prepare yourself into this. I mean, even walking in here today, like, you know, I'm an open book with a lot of things I do. And I want people to realize that, like, you know, I'm an honest person, for sure. And you have your ins and outs on how you get to, you know, to certain levels of what you do in your own field. And you know, I hate to harp on the chemical side because, you know, the food is, like I mentioned, and the training was just, I mean, we can touch small, but I reminisce now 30 years of, like, you know, thinking, man, is it ever going to happen? And when you win that title, it's just like you have a flash of, like, all the things that happened in order to get there. And here you are, the best in the world at what you do. And to this day, I'm living as, like, he was the greatest bodybuilder for 4 years and second for 6, right? So it's pretty crazy.
You know, to me, the food is still mind-blowing. That part, like, I don't care what you're taking. That I'm not eating 140 pounds of chicken. That to me, like, people, I think, lose that part of it. And then, like I said before, you know, naturally having big legs, playing defensive tackle. I think all of these things sort of play into it, and people confuse it for, say, I just take person X and I stick chemical B into them, and then they get big, and that just isn't how it works.
Yeah, and the disappointing, I'll tell you the most disappointing part about what I did for a living. I don't enjoy food to this day. Like, if you called me and said, Jay, there's this wonderful restaurant opening in Las Vegas, like, you know, we see it all the time, right? And you say, what do you eat when you go out? And I don't want to have steak. Like, I'm not a big steak eater at 48 now. I tend to eat some sushi, but I'm limited even on that, just because I know, like, a lot of sushi rice has a ton of sugar. Yeah. And, you know, I might eat just some plain fish or whatever else. But there's nothing that excites me. There's no food. Oh, does mom cook her special meal when I go back home, or nothing?
So 20 eggs a day.
I drink the egg whites now. That's the difference between back then to now, is they didn't have pasteurized egg whites. So now you can buy the cartons and you can drink them, and it's actually a very good source of protein instead of, you know, frying them up. So I was cracking the eggs, flipping the yolk out, throwing it, and then having the egg whites. So it was a lot of work. I mean, there was some diets, I'm not going to lie, I ate 140 egg whites a day. So I was cracking eggs nonstop. I mean, I remember sitting and cracking eggs for an hour in the morning, and I would put everything in Tupperware containers, and I would just dump out. I was eating 30 egg whites a meal then, because there's only about 3 grams of protein in an egg white. And I was eating, 500 grams of protein.
That's unbelievable, man. So you also mentioned 1,000
grams of carbs.
Grams of carbs, and then 300 to 400 grams of protein per day. That's what you're doing while you were training.
Most of the time, yeah.
Man, so that's crazy. The idea of eating 7 times a day would rob you of the joy of eating. I mean, but it makes sense. It makes sense.
It's crazy though, because I would eat, you know, 6,000 calories a day or whatever. And there's a lot of people that go out in one meal and eat 6,000 calories, right? So we talk about calories versus good and bad. Yeah. So when you're actually building and you day in, day out eat every 2 hours, you know, good food to equal that amount with low fat, right? My goal was to eat as low fat as possible. Even the red meat I ate was just 100, like, it was super, super lean. And when I would diet for contests, I would cut down to whitefish. Like, so if you asked me, I want to get in the best shape of my life, I would go on more of a whitefish diet. I would go moderate to low carbohydrates on certain days, but I feel that you still need, every 4th day, you need a big bump in carbohydrates. but I would shift the calories. So we call this zigzag dieting. So basically, you know, calories in a protein and carbohydrate are the same. It's 4 calories per gram.
Yeah.
Where fat is 9 calories per gram. So ideally you shift the calories around and you can kind of trick your body into losing body fat, but obviously maintain muscle.
Right.
So my whole goal was to be as big as I possibly could on Olympia stage, but be as lean. We got down to 3% at, you know, 260, 265, 270.
You guys are like chemists and thermodynamicists.
Yeah.
That's what because we're going to get to, I want to get to the 09 when you come back after losing to Dexter Jackson, because to me, you know, I'm a former military officer, and the way you guys attack these problems of my back needs to get wider and I need to increase the calorie. These are physics problems. These are geometry problems that you guys are handling, and the way you attack them is just so fascinating to me. So let's talk about this. Let's get to 06. You win the first time. Do you remember? A lot of people, they talk about which championship they like. The first one is the one they remember the best. What was that like?
That was amazing. You know, my dad was happy. That's for sure. You know. But after being second 4 times to Coleman, it was a big relief. And at the time, you know, I was the Vegas guy. I was very well known here, and it happened on the Orleans. I think it happened on the Orleans stage. So we had shifted from Mandalay Bay to Orleans, and I was able to win that, man. And just you know, my whole life changed. My whole life changed for the good. Because I became Mr. Olympia, but at the time, you know, I was married. You know, we were still together, and my life just got so busy.
Yeah,
and that kind of put a lot of strain on the marriage in time.
Yeah. You mentioned before about real estate stuff. At this point now, your income's greater. How many properties are you owning here in Las Vegas, Los Angeles?
You know, I had owned about 7 right directly when I moved here. I was flipping homes. I was doing what kind of everyone's doing now, but in the early stages. And I had a few rental properties. And then I moved on to commercial real estate once I had the capital to move over and have, so I got into more land purchasing. And then I was living between California. I was in Marina Del Rey, so I had a place in Marina Del Rey, and I was staying in Las Vegas. And what I found for me was, you know, the various streams of income was great. And I was doing mail order at the time. You know, the website started cranking, and then of course, you know, we hadn't reached the Instagram phase yet till like 2012.
2012, yeah.
So for me, it was like all the merchandising, and I had one of the biggest contracts, if not the biggest ever. And, you know, I was endorsing a brand called Muscle Tech, who were amazing. So I was using all those products, and I had, you know, so many different things. I was doing magazine contracts. And of course, you know, winning Mr. Olympia, my price went through the roof as far as guest appearances. So I was traveling worldwide to be the face, to be the representation of bodybuilding.
Were you using the fame of Jay Cutler to help you in the real estate?
No, I was not actually. Yeah. I mean, the beginning it helped a little bit, but for me, it actually became a little bit of a nuisance because, you know, renting properties and dealing with tenants, and, you know, people here were during that time, like early 2000s, they were in and out.
Yeah.
So I had a couple people that, you know, just bailed and left stuff behind, and, you know, having people that you thought, you know, where you knew the people, they were kind of a little sketch, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I kind of got away from the rental residential properties. It just wasn't easy for me to manage at the time, even though, you know, I could have hired a management team. I was trying to do it all myself and my wife at the time.
Wow, man, that's crazy. Yeah, having I can't imagine how busy that must be with all the travel.
And I was away every weekend.
Yeah.
And
but at this point, you're obviously making more money from endorsements than you are from competing.
Oh, yeah.
Significantly more. And we're in the web phase. We have some Facebook, but we don't have Instagram yet. And you're using that in order to sell products, your own products on there. I was going to ask you this later, but I'm a big pre-workout guy. What do you use?
I have a product called Prevail.
Okay,
so I'll let you try it.
Please,
be the judge.
Yes,
and it's actually really good because it works with more nootropics. So it's more of an ingredient called alpha GPC. So it's more like tunnel vision.
Yeah.
So it's not like that crazy high stim.
Yeah.
Tons of caffeine where you get cranked up and you crash down.
Yeah.
So it's my biggest seller. It's great. It's all, you know, mostly direct to consumer and Amazon. It's got great reviews.
I like switch every day. Like I'll have 4 different pre-workouts and I'll switch them all the time because I go lift at midnight because I'm at Panorama Towers. It's a 24-hour gym.
Well, I actually have a great product at night that won't keep you up.
Yeah.
It's called Amplify. It's a stim free, but it gives you great pumps. So
beautiful.
I got a couple of answers for your.
I love it, man.
Notes.
I love it. Awesome, man. All right, so you win in 06. You win in 07. Do you change your training regimen? Because this is another thing I didn't realize. You can't keep doing the same thing. Your body changes over time. So the weight training and the diet have to change over time.
Yeah, so I win in 06, and then Coleman comes back in 07. He's a shadow of himself. So he's...
Is this because of injury? Why is he a shadow of himself?
He's just age, and I just think, you know, I really think me beating him also was just huge on ego, right? And he finished 4th, and... you know, that year I had the infection.
Yeah.
I mentioned the Winstrol injection. And I almost lost to a guy named Victor Martinez.
Right.
And so I come back in 08. I'm still Mr. Olympia. And this guy, Dexter Jackson, who's been trailing all along since the early 2000s. We came on the circuit the same year in 99, first Olympia. He ends up beating me.
Yeah.
And... the formula it was a hard switch for me because, and I'm going to probably talk about something I didn't really talk about ever. I had Ronnie Coleman, so I was bigger every year because he was a monster. He was the greatest bodybuilder of all time. I'll publicly say that. There's no one that's ever topped that physique. So when I battled to beat him, I became that big, where I was, I think I won my first Olympia at 273 in 06. So I came in 07 around the same, but it just wasn't the same. It wasn't the best look because the guys were a little smaller, but I also had the infection. So I come in 08 thinking, okay, I'm going to downsize a little bit. I'm going to try to figure out, because now I know that Ronnie Coleman's definitely not coming back. He had basically walked away, and the field was not as big as Ronnie. And I just missed, and I came in smaller. Dexter swept me, and you know, I finished 2nd, and everyone wrote me off as like, okay, the guy's done, because once you lose the Olympia, no one's ever come back in history to win it.
Right. Well, lose the Olympia. Now, just Schwarzenegger won in 70, and then he won in 80, but he never lost.
He never lost.
Yeah. So here's the thing.
It was questionable in 80, by the way.
Was it?
Yeah, it was very questionable.
Dexter Jackson, this is his only Olympia win. He's won 26 IBFF championships.
I think he's 29 now.
Yeah, 29. He very accomplished, but this is his only win. He wins that time. Now, here is the big question. I don't know if I've ever heard anyone ask you this specifically. Step by step, the difference between 08 and 09 from a pharmacological standpoint, from a weight training standpoint, from a diet, exercise standpoint, what changes to make you look like Voltron? Because you looked, like obviously 09, you look like a fucking superhero. What is the thing that happens there?
I think I didn't touch upon, I worked with a nutritionist from the time I was 18. His name was Chris Aceto. He lived in Maine, and I was from Worcester, Mass. So he was about 20 minutes, he was 2 hours from me. So he would come back and forth, and I would go visit him. Well, I worked with him all the way up until I lost in 08. And I knew that, hey, I need to make a change probably, and I need a different opinion. Or, you know, it was kind of like we went into shows together, and he was like, you got this. You know, you're better than these guys. I think we just became accustomed and became a little too complacent.
Right.
So I switched to a guy named Hani Rambod, who ended up being, you know, he was training Phil Heath, who wasn't even relevant at this point. He actually was 3rd in 08, but he wasn't really a contender yet. So I switched training to him. I kind of revamped the kind of training I did to create more of an illusion, more fuller look. I think, you know, we had to chisel the physique down, but at the same time balance that, because I was so big for so long. And I mentioned, you know, with the insulin years prior, like all that stuff had come out of the protocols, right, for a couple of years now. So I was still trying to figure that out. And, you know, he just had his ways of training me, and the nutrition was more food than I ever ate.
Okay, so now, there you go.
Now the food has gone up. And when I dialed down for the contest, I was 254 pounds, which is the lightest I had been in years. But the illusion with the lighting and the conditioning, I got on the stairs for the first time doing cardio. He's honestly the one that pushed me to get on a stair mill instead of a bike or a treadmill. That's how I always did my cardio. So I got on the stairs, I got conditioned really heavy in the glutes and hamstrings, and I came in like and won the show, and never before has that been done.
I'm shocked that that's the lightest, because you look like, I mean, it was pretty you know, dramatic. The way you walked in, I think the pre-show, you knew you were going to win. I think a lot of people knew you were going to win.
Yeah, I had a lot of changes. You know, I had certain hairstyle going on, and people talked about that. You know, I cut my hair, and I was just like, I was kind of just, you know, refreshed of like, hey, I'm back, and I'm not going anywhere. At the time, like I mentioned, I was under huge contracts.
Yeah.
I was the biggest earner. I was the most popular. And so when I came out, where a lot of people were like, you know, it's very easy for the haters to say, you know, he's done. Remember, this is prior to internet, like being crazy. They still, internet existed, but social media didn't exist. So all the message boards, you know, they would just say, you know, Jay's done and whatever else. But, you know, I shocked the world.
Let me ask you, do you hear or see them whenever you're lifting?
No.
No.
I tend to thrive off positivity rather than...
Okay. Because sometimes when I'm going for a PR, other people may bully me in high school, whatever. I still see that.
You know, I wasn't that guy. I didn't start training because I was, you know, I was popular in high school.
Yeah.
And, you know, like I mentioned, no one's surprised what I became. But
yeah,
I never really focused on like, I'm going to prove to this person or that person. I was more like, am I able to do this?
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, like you might have thought I walked out there like with the confidence, like I knew it was mine.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was like, shit, I just hope I look good for this contest. And I hope that no one else looks better than me, because it's all like up to the judges, right? But I knew this was the best I had looked in some time. To be honest, the weight, light as it was, scared me a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, am I going to be big enough? But then I'm like, well, Dexter Jackson's a lot smaller.
Yeah, he is.
And he won the year prior, and he looked phenomenal for that show. And Branch Warren got second to me, who was a lot smaller. You know, we battled as teenagers together at the Teen Nationals. So I was prepared. I mean, I was prepared mentally. I knew who my competition, and you know, that was the nice thing about being top 2 in the world for so long, is you could study who you really thought your competition was. Like, you know, I sat there with like a playbook and studied Ronnie Coleman's
It's like
poses.
being a chess master.
So I'm like, okay, when he hits this back double bicep, I'm going to pivot this way, because I knew I couldn't beat him on the back double, right? He had the best back in bodybuilding ever. So I knew that, you know, I was going to switch and do certain things to draw the judges' eyes different directions and stop looking at what they saw as the dominant, you know?
Right.
So there was a lot of different techniques that we did. And there was some shit talk up there, I'll be honest. Like when we turned our back to the judges, like there was some shit said.
Okay, I've never heard you talk about this. What happened? What kind of stuff?
No, it's just like when we turned around, it was like Ronnie would be like, all right, you know, let's go to school, you know? And because he knew his back poses were dominant. And, you know, when I got up there with the guys and the new age coming in, when Ronnie disappeared, you know, and I was very close to Phil, and Dexter was like obviously a guy that we traveled with. We were under the same supplement company, all of us really. So we traveled on the off season together. So I'd be like, all right, boys, let's go, you know. And people know me. I'm a very, like I mentioned, I'm quiet, but when you know me, I crack a lot of jokes like that. So I would just talk shit and, you know, just kind of make some noises, and really, Phil would be cracking up because, you know, we're facing the curtain. Yeah. So the judges can't see our faces, and we're laughing, you know, as we're hitting like the poses. And
what people cool. wouldn't give for a parabolic mic of those conversations. I mean,
it would be kind of cool if they actually, like, if the production was that heavy where they had those booms and they were able to, like, okay, let's put them in front and see what these guys are saying, because like we talked a lot of shit.
That's incredible. It's
pretty cool, yeah.
No idea about that. That's amazing. Can you talk about what Ronnie Coleman meant to you? He was your idol growing up. My first time, I'm from Dallas. He was a police officer, I believe, in Arlington.
Yeah, he was.
And they would do articles about him. I'd see him on the news. This humongous man. You know, he was a historically black university. Went to Grambling State. Played middle linebacker there. What did he? And then just the incredible, like, just gifted genetic strength. What did Ronnie Coleman mean to you?
I would have been as great if it wasn't for him. Like he, you know, what I realize now, being on the outside and being out of that competitive mind set, like he gave me not only the opportunity to stand and challenge me with the best body, but he made me push harder every year. We spent a lot of great time in the off season. The magazines would they would put us against each other because they had to create some sort of rivalry, right? Yeah. And the funny thing is we were very respectful in a sense, even though, like, you hear, like, there's the line that Ronnie's like, they said, Jay Cutler says he can beat you. And he says, I think Jay Cutler's smoking crack. You know, he had these funny one-liners, you know, buddy. And So,
by the way, how big was he? So he's a little bit
he's 5'11". I'm 5'9".
Okay.
And listen, he was a monster, but I mean, I was right up there. But I mean, he just had certain body parts that just, you know, he was just so overwhelming in certain poses.
Yeah.
His legs were gigantic, and you know, in his prime, you know, and it wasn't always that case. Remember, he was natural in his first Mr. Olympia. And
yeah.
Like he didn't figure out the formula till '98. He won his first one.
Wait. Okay.
And he was 9th the year before.
So he was natural in his first.
Yes.
Okay.
He turned professional natural, and he was natural in his first Olympia.
I guess I'm asking, how do you know he was natural? He's telling you this?
I know he was.
Yeah.
I mean, look at his football pitcher from Grambling. I mean,
Okay.
He's unbelievable.
Yeah.
You know, he didn't know anything. You know.
Yeah.
And for him, like he didn't really have the knowledge. He said he just wanted to join the gym, and he was being a pizza delivery guy, and they said, "Hey, compete in this show for a free gym membership." And he's like, "Okay." So we have a similar background where, you know, he went from 9th to 1st. I went from 8th to basically 2nd, and I should have won that year, 2001. I'll say it on record. But like our expectations were never to be the best bodybuilder in the world. Like we wanted to be, but like if you asked me early on, hey, you're going to win the Olympia, when I started at 18 or 24, I couldn't even imagine looking like Dorian Yates and Lee Haney, these guys. So I think, you know, our confidence really started to boost as we got more successful. But he was just happy to be there. He didn't care about the money, and he made a fortune doing it. And listen, we lived a great lifestyle, but we traveled together, we trained together, we ate together, we went to clubs together.
So that was my next question. This is your number one nemesis, and you guys are hanging out together on a regular basis.
We were very friendly.
Yeah.
You know, I remember specifically this one night where, you know, we would go to the show in Pittsburgh. It was, you know, Jim Mannion's show. He was, you know, he's the NPC president, IFBB. He's the man, you know, he's basically the guy that runs the whole thing. He would bring all of us out to guest pose, like top 5 in the Olympia. And every show, you know, we'd guest pose, and then we'd go out after to the city. And I remember Ronnie Coleman would go out, and he'd be wearing like cut off sleeves. Right, and he's 300 pounds, and he's veined up, right? So we're in this club in Pittsburgh, and I'm kind of going around with my buddies or whatever. You know, we had a lot of friends in the industry, and we were just walking around, just checking out the scene and whatever. And Ronnie would sit against the wall, and he would just kind of do this. And I remember I said, let's just watch, because people would freak. He would sit against the wall, and you know, his arms were hanging out. He had like 24-inch arms at the time. And I remember just watching people's faces, especially people that are like messed up, you know, and they just look, and they'd double take, and they'd be like, oh my God. And they'd be pointing to their friends, like, look at this guy. And he would just sit there like no attention at all. And we'd leave the club, close at 2:00. And I remember we'd say, hey, Ronnie, did you have a good time? And he's like, hell yeah. He didn't move all night. He just sat on the whole time,
just got attention.
Didn't talk to one person, and he loved it.
That's so great.
You know, he loved it. He's just such a good... He's just a good-natured guy, and we just did a meet and greet like 2 weeks ago at the Arnold Classic. You know, Schwarzenegger brought us out to do like a meet and greet together for the first time. We'd never actually set up meet Jay Cutler, Ronnie Coleman. We've done appearances together, but not like an actual meet and greet. And we got to take pictures with the fans, and it meant so much to me. So I mean, it's just great. It's just sad to see that he's having such a hard time with his health.
Yeah, he talks about a severe injury he had playing football, and then he had another one, I think, while he was...
He had the surgeries, you know, he had some back surgeries, and I don't think they went as planned. And it did affect him, and it has affected him. But he's so positive, you know, he's so positive, and, you know, we're in a different place in life now where, you know, his children are everything to him. I think he's got like four or five younger daughters, I think, that live with him. And it's crazy, like, just to see the transition and what he's left for a legacy and how many people respect him. And, you know, he's always going to be my idol, you know?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
That's incredible. Then you get to meet him and you spend that much time with him. It's amazing. How much access, like, so for instance, Schwarzenegger, some of these other guys, are you in regular conversation with them frequently?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, which is amazing to me because, you know, we didn't touch upon, like, when I first started training, I knew who Arnold was. The Terminator 2 movie launched when I was, like, in high school. And I followed Van Damme and Stallone. Yeah. And the craziest thing is, like, you never imagine going to California from Massachusetts and, you know, meeting these people. And both times I met, you know, I got to meet Van Damme and I got to meet Stallone. They both said the same thing to me. They're like, Jay, I'm a huge fan. They, you know, handshake. And I got to spend time with Stallone. He was doing the Contender series. He did the boxing thing. So I got to actually spend some quality time with him. And I still see Van Damme training at Gold's Venice often.
Yeah.
But Arnold was one of those guys where, like, he was just so, like, such a higher level, right?
Yeah.
Because he was a huge film star, and he was, the guy that made bodybuilding, kind of recognized. And I was able to interact with him over the years, and now, obviously as we kind of progress, we become closer. And he had me as a guest out to the show this year, like I mentioned, and we get to spend time around each other. And he's done great things for bodybuilding, and he's really been a mentor to a lot of us. And
just to be that naturally funny. I mean, he is. Yeah, we're just an amazing personality.
And I got to go to Austria, where he grew up, and see his home, and see where he came from, and listen to the stories.
Yeah.
And what was really cool about, I won that show 3 times, the Arnold Classic.
Yeah.
And every year or so, Schwarzenegger would come off set, and at the time he was doing like all his movies. He was doing, he was Mr. Freeze one year. But see, we would get the preview, the trailer before anyone else saw it.
Wow, okay.
So they would put that in the arena where the show was taking place. So it was just really cool. And then, of course, when he became governor, it was just, crazy.
Why is Arnold Classic always in Ohio?
Yeah,
why is it in Ohio?
He had a relationship with Jim Lorimer there, who's his co-promoter, and he said, I'm gonna support you, and he brought the show to Columbus. And it's what people don't realize, though, is Columbus, Ohio is very accessible from a lot of regions. Where, like, we have shows in Vegas, but you got to fly a lot to get here, right? I mean, you can get from California, Texas, whatever. But Ohio is just, you can get a lot of from, the East Coast, New York, Chicago, all the Midwest, you can drive into it. So I think it's a little easier for access.
When you're competing, I was watching the one about you in 2008, the documentary you had, and you're on the ground and you're answering these questions, and it's very clear you're in some discomfort. Obviously, you get.
I was annoyed. Yeah.
Yeah. You're dehydrated. Is any of this blurry to you? Do you fully remember all of this?
Yeah, I do remember. Yeah. It was my documentary, so all access. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No, what I mean is, that level of dehydration. Do any of these moments seem like they were a dream, or all of it was just like, because you're at a severe level of dehydration at this point?
Yeah, that's the hardest part about what we did.
Yeah.
Was sucking the water out the last week. I mean, there's been shows I've lost 20 pounds the last week just to fluid. I mean, you don't drink for a couple of days, and you have to get that shrink wrap skin.
Yeah.
And that's really unattainable for a long period of time. So when you see us on stage, like with the cuts and that dry look, like, you can't hold that for too long, right? So when you see the magazine shoots, like, that's a very short period. It's really not healthy to stay that lean.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful and weigh that out correctly. But it definitely, I remember, but the clarity isn't what it normally is when you're eating on a normal diet and you have hydration.
I'm just so I'm imagining this day you're dehydrated and it's just an adrenaline rush when you go on stage, and that's what's carrying you.
Oh yeah, it's all adrenaline.
Yeah. That's what's going on there. And what do you do? What is that day like? Are you sleeping most of the day? Are you what
No, I mean, you barely sleep because you're so amped up, and
right.
Remember, it's like the Olympics, right? So you have that one day, once a year to peak. I mean, especially once you win the Olympia, it's the only contest you do. Because normally what we do is when you win the Olympia, you don't normally compete in a lot of other competitions. Right. You just defend your title because you're so in demand through the other times of the year. So for me, it's just, preparation, mental, going through, practicing the posing, looking in the mirror, making sure that, remember, you're an artist, so you're chiseling down to that last performance.
Yeah.
And, just feeling comfortable and just knowing that, hey, this is my best. And, like I mentioned, studying, okay, who's your competition? And then, we break the show into like 2 different phases. So there's a morning and a night show. So after the morning, you're kind of like asking people around you, okay, so who's looking good? Who do I need to watch for? Okay, how can I stand out against this person? And, hope that, obviously the winner, which a lot of times I was first or second. So it was quite an advantage.
A friend of mine, we met at her house, Claudia Fijal. She has a question for you. Her question is, what is your favorite moment in your entire career competing?
The 2009 comeback.
That's what I was thinking you were going to say. The foot stomp is something you practice beforehand?
Yeah, the quad stomp, it's very It wasn't planned.
It wasn't planned.
No. So I looked down at my leg and I had this crazy outer sweep that had cross striations, right? I still have it actually. And I put my foot down and I kind of looked down to make sure my legs were cut, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And that picture was taken. So that famous quad stomp image was kind of born. And, but you mentioned like, okay, you win the Miss Olympia in 06, right?
Yeah.
You figured that would be the biggest
Yeah.
moment,
No, I
right?
thought you were going to say 09.
Okay, but when after you lose and you come back and no one's ever done that and like you look your best probably you ever looked, like that was just like so satisfying for me. And the place went crazy, man. Like I just, you know, if you ask me what I miss, it's just the crowd, the lights, and being on stage is crazy. And you know, you're on certain stages at a certain level.
Yeah.
And all eyes on you. And
you know,
like,
it's funny, and I bet you probably feel the same way. I am more comfortable being on stage in front of 2,000 people than I am talking one-on-one.
Really?
Yeah. I have no fear of public speaking. I don't know if my brain is just wired differently. For you competing, I'm sure, do you ever wish you could do it like every 3 months, like more consistently? Or
you know, I didn't necessarily like it.
Okay.
I didn't like the performance. Like
Yeah.
I mentioned, what do I miss? I miss the lights and I miss the crowd response. But the whole thing about being on stage and all eyes on you with, you know, oh, this is the best bodybuilder in the world. Like that doesn't, the ego thing was never really that spectacular for me. The thing is like winning, the moments of winning and looking your best are so freaking cool to me. But remember, I wasn't always my best on that stage. So sometimes it's like, okay, just let's get this shit done and be over with it, right? So that's where I feel different. But I can understand, like you're saying, because I do a podcast also, sometimes it's hard to like, okay, am I asking the right questions? Or, like there's uncertainty with what you do. But when you're on stage and you're like, you know, up there like announcing and whatever, you know exactly, like there's a flow, right? You've done it a gazillion times. So it's just routine for you, right?
Yeah.
And you're having fun and you listen to crowd cheer for different people. And sometimes it's, you know, it's always great to have that performance. But for me, it's like I've never really wanted to be the center of attention. Yeah. But when I win, man, it's just like, man, all that hard work paid off because it's like a year of hard work.
I can't even imagine.
It was crazy.
That's amazing. Your podcast, let's talk about that. You know, I'm checking. I think you have the biggest podcast in Las Vegas. I was checking around because I think Mike Tyson isn't really doing his very much. I think you are. I have two different YouTube channels. So I have Jay Cutler TV, which is I have over 500,000 subscribers. But my podcast I just started probably like 3 months ago. And Cutlercast.
Yeah. So I do that, and
it's doing really well.
I
man.
did it. Yeah. The traction I'm getting, but we are starting to bring on guests. But I like to do in-house. I don't like to do remote. Yeah. So obviously, coming out of the pandemic, it's been a little different. And people are starting to travel again. And being me, it's kind of cool because everyone comes to Las Vegas. Yes. Right. I think this is the best place in the world to have a podcast, right? Because at some point, someone's coming here, let you know. But it's just trying to choose the right guests and manage that, right? So it's a little easier when you run into someone like me and I'm like, hey, I want to be on your podcast, you know? Don't you wish it was all that easy? Yeah, it is. I'll tell you what, the other thing that's crazy is like a lot of people get sponsored to come here. So some of the models you see that come on here, like Sapphire will have them do an appearance. I'm like, can you do the podcast the day before? And they're always like, yes. And then also I have a bikini competition I'm hosting this summer and the MGM is going to pay for their hotel room. So like now it's easy for me to get a lot of those people to come out here as guests, but you're right. I think this is, especially because I've seen some studios in Los Angeles, how much more hassle it is, how much more expensive it is, how long it takes to get things edited, and like even the parking situation. Whereas here, it's just like, this is great
setup. Super easy setup that we have.
But you're a natural at it, man. That's why I was like, I need to be on your podcast because I knew you'd ask the right questions, and you know, I know we never really got to converse a lot. So you know, behind the scenes, like we're not. This is like the first time we really got to sit face to face and talk. Even at the party, we didn't get to speak so much. But, you know, there's a lot of ins and outs of what we do. And I mean, we're only kind of scraping the surface of it. And a lot of people don't realize the real person, right? They only see this image of this guy that won Olympias and, of course, now on the social media because I'm super active on social. I mean, I have a big Instagram. And, you know, Facebook was one of my biggest. Your TikTok's great, man. I've been watching your TikTok. Yeah, so I have a lot of help, you know, trying to come up with certain content. But I think that's the hardest part of what we're doing now is like, how do I keep up with trends? Yeah. And shooting content. Like, you have to stay consistent. And that's the biggest thing even with like the podcasting, is like you can't miss a week.
That's exactly right.
Because if you miss one, it turns into two. But if I can give anyone advice on how to, you know, continue with success, you have to be consistent with anything in life.
Yeah.
I mean, I mentioned that with the training, the sleeping patterns, the, you know, nutrition. It comes with your work schedule too.
Yeah. I think the biggest problem that people have is when they over edit or they put way too many artifacts in their podcast and it has to be perfect every single time. And I'm just like, so for me, I have a coaching program called Men of Action where I teach. And one of the things we talk about is keeping things simple. I watch Joe Rogan as a mentor, right? Joe Rogan does not cut anything out. He has some commercials on his Spotify version and that's about it. And he goes through the whole time and his intro song is like 4 seconds long. And when I saw that, I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. And then the funny thing for me is producing 3 hours of content takes me less time than it takes Casey Neistat to do 10 minutes of content. And this is just, to me, it's like if you can consistently do it over and over again a week. So for instance, me and John were talking about doing 2 a week. And I was like, man, if I do 2 a week and I have to go away, then I got to do 6, 7 ahead of time. So that's why I kind of stick with 1 a week and then produce shorts and TikToks and stuff like that. So yeah, you're right, man. I mean, I think the consistency is the thing, or the number of people I know that start podcasts, they'll have 20 saved up before they even release the first one. And it's like, just release it, man. Don't worry about it being perfect. I have screwed up. I've said so many incorrect things on this podcast before, except to the flat earthers. You guys are all liars. Everything I said was true. You just have to get over that, and you just have to keep pushing.
Yeah.
If somebody's gonna watch you for an hour, man, they love you. They don't give a shit. If someone's gonna watch you for 2 hours, they love you. They don't give a shit.
Man, I started doing videos on YouTube back in 2008 before there were creators, and I used a handheld bullshit. And like I mentioned, we were shoot a lot of stuff on a cell phone, and they don't care. They don't care. They just want to see like it's amazing. People sit and watch videos of me shopping at Costco or eating a meal. Like I had someone hit me up on Instagram. I wish you would post you eating the food. It's like
I'm just as fascinated.
How many videos do you want to watch me sitting for 10 minutes and eating my chicken breast and like chewing bites and like how is that exciting?
So we want your bathroom schedule next. That's the next thing they want for your podcast. The thing with you specifically, though, I think your podcast is obviously going to be a success because your perspective is so different. It doesn't matter. Like you don't have to worry about what questions to ask. You're asking them from the Jay Cutler perspective. You had World's Strongest Man on there,
Brian Shaw.
Brian Shaw, when he was on there, and you were surprised that he was looking to you for influence, right? And the thing is, that's the thing. Like no matter what that experience you have is. No matter what your question is, because it's coming from you, it's always going to have a different weight to it.
I never realized that story that he was working the front desk and he was like, they charged me and he felt so bad at the gym because he's like, do you know who that is?
Yeah.
And he was a fan and this guy's like world renowned now. He was on the Discovery Channel, like History Channel doing this show. And like, it's just crazy how things transition, man. You never know. You never imagine you make that impact, especially coming from a super small town. And living in Vegas, I mean, it's just my friends from back home are like, what's it like in Las Vegas? I mean, living here, I've been here since 2002, like 20 years. And man, I love it. I love Vegas.
Me too. I don't understand how people live anywhere else. I love this place. So here's the other thing. So now from 2009 to 2010, is there a change in the way you train at that point?
No, pretty much just, I was going through a lot in that. I ended up getting a divorce in 2011.
Yeah.
Which obviously that affected it. All fell when I tore the bicep, and at the time I was living at the Mandarin Oriental, which is now Waldorf.
I remember I met you there one time. Yeah.
Okay, so I was living there. So for the first time in that time, I was training, without the companionship and kind of balancing everything, and it was a lot harder. My dog passed away, which I was a huge. My dogs are everything to me, and I was going through contract negotiations and. I ended up leaving like my biggest sponsor right after that contest, which I felt like the world kind of came down when I lost. But, 2010 was, it was another victory. But then, of course, like I mentioned, it was a transition in life. Life kind of took a different turn for me. And I never had children, so it wasn't like I was had that torn. But at the same time, I was, with someone for that many years, and I wasn't sure where I was heading, at that point. And you know, I started dating and stuff like that. So it was kind of weird to get back into
Okay,
that.
so what is that like, being world famous Jay Cutler, living in Las Vegas? Dude, I'm out here in these streets today, and I'm 44. I'm curious, what is it like being Jay Cutler, and now you are dating? First off, what is it like, the response from females when you're competing, and then what's it like after that?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like, you have to have I always said, if a girl always thought I was attractive when I was 300, they have to be a little crazy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But some people have that, like, I like, you know, the muscle, right?
Yeah.
But you know, if you asked like a lot of girls that dated me, they didn't see what most people see.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't see the 280 pounds or whatever, and it was more like, okay, he's just Jay, you know. And you know, I started dating, and you know, of course, social media was the craze then.
Bro, I can't even
Instagram.
imagine you being like out on the streets.
So
dating.
I think in the beginning, like, I was kind of like, okay, you know, who did I find attractive, you know? And, you know, it ended up like, you know, I dated a little bit, and, you know, and then, but I always tend to be a guy that settles down. So, you know, I dated a girl on and off for several years, and now, you know, I've been in a relationship now for, you know, over 5 years with the same girl, and engaged. And, you know, so you think that there's this lavish lifestyle of like dating and traveling. Yeah, I did have my, you know, my international stuff that I traveled to. I mean, I traveled to the best places, Brazil,
of course,
Middle East, and all these places. You know, I traveled worldwide, you know, Germany, you know, UK, Canada. So you meet all types of women, but at the same time, it's like I was always kind of on this strict, even when I retired, I was still, you know, having to balance, you know, I was still working out. I still work out to this day. And my business was like through the roof.
Yeah.
You know, I became a business owner right after leaving a lot of my endorsements and trying to balance all my different ventures.
This is your merchandise, your
merchandising, supplements. I mean, that takes up a lot of my time, and you know, I've transitioned to a lot of different things, but at the same time, like, that's like what I'm known for. You know, I'm promoting events now, so I have contests. Like, I have one coming up here April 9th here in Las Vegas at South Point called the Jay Cutler Desert Classic. I do the one the next week in Boston. I just mentioned I was out there for a pro show, you know, a week ago. So you transition into now things that your name has built you to, but at the same time, I'm still on that like that tunnel vision. Like, I still want to be successful, so I don't deviate too much from what I do. But don't get me wrong, I still went out to the clubs, and you know, and I was witness of some of your events, which you probably don't realize. I think I came to one at the
Rehab?
Yeah, Rehab.
Yeah, those were, listen, Rehab, I know it has a weird reputation, but when we threw those bikini competitions, they were incredible. So that's actually where I met Phil Heath the first time, was at like 2015, I think. So as a business person, right, you had a level of focus, and you've mentioned about not letting negativity in, having an incredible amount of focus. And then the other thing is, you talked about the networks you built, and those networks taking you to different places right now.
Yeah, relationships really got me in a lot of great positions, and that was worldwide relationships, and, you know, giving time to everyone. But at the same time, like, I also had to have a passion for what I did, and that's why, you know, I got into supplements and, you know, fitness apparel and all that kind of stuff. I do, you know, I have a whole belt line, like weight belts and wrist straps, and, you know, I've done it all. You know, drinks, and it's just given me a great opportunity. Plus the memorabilia stuff. So like, I'm doing a lot of merchandising and social media now. I mean, I'm working on an NFT project now, and you know, trying to build a gym in the metaverse, and I'm doing all sorts of things. That's incredible. Yeah.
What your NFT, is it going to be a pose? Like, what is your?
I have but some figures that I'm launching out.
Okay.
But they're going to be attached to obviously some opportunities for discounts on what I do. More like group chats, and we're talking about doing meetups like at the Mr. Olympia, being part of a community. So there's a lot of utilities tied to it, but also there's going to be a lot of different characters that aren't necessarily Jay Cutler characters, but we're having to have a membership in a gym that's like a virtual gym, right? So which is a cool concept.
It's so hard for people to grasp this. There's only a certain number of sushi restaurants, certain number of gyms in the metaverse, in the 60, 70,000 plots of land that they have. That's just I'm still trying to wrap my head around it.
Yeah, and listen, it's every day is a learning process for me too. But when I was presented with the concept, I was like, wow, this could be really cool for the fitness space, because I think at some point it will be a realistic thing for people to understand, right? And the opportunity. And I've never been a gym owner myself in like here, where people think that a lot of these gyms, like I train at Fit Club, I have a big mural there. I train at all the different gyms, Kilo Club and, Lift Factory and EOS's and LVACs. Like everyone's treated me great here. But I've never really wanted to be an actual real gym owner in Las Vegas.
Is that something you're considering?
No.
Okay. Just the metaverse thing. That's, I don't know the answer to this one. Gavin wanted me to ask you about Ryan Diaz.
He's great. He's one of the owners of Fit Club. He is off the wall, man. He's, he's always been good to me. Like Ryan was one of these guys that we trained together at like City Athletic. He was around, Gold's Gym of EOS back in the day. And man, he's the face of Fit Club. Like he's their social guy. I just wish he would do more with it, because
I met him when he was a host, and then he's
he's awesome. Like he is just so friendly, and he does obviously training, but he's like their hype guy. I guess everyone needs like a hype guy, and Diaz is like one of those guys. Man, he does crazy stuff on social media, he does. And I enjoy a lot of his commentary on Instagram.
Beautiful. Somebody, you mentioned this before, somebody trying to come up and get into this realm now. What advice would you give for them? Like, so here's the thing. Like, I know all the men in my family. I'm by far the biggest dude in my family, but that's because I weight trained for 20 years and I'm not that big, right? Other men in my family just scrawny arms and like pear-shaped bodies or whatever. Genetics has a part to do with this. Work ethic has a part to do with this. Diet has apparently a way bigger part to do this than I ever imagined. What kind of advice would you give to somebody, just starting off in the early 20s?
I would kind of just, find a program that works well for you around your schedule. That means like around your work or school schedule. Pick a workout that, you're in the gym at 3 or 4 days a week to start. I mean, I train up to, 5 or 6 days total. Not necessarily all days in a row, but, train each body part once every 5 to 7 days. The eating program, like there's a lot of information online. I mean, I have a lot of cool things through my channels, whether it's Instagram or.
Do you have any channels for HRT?
I don't.
Okay.
No, I don't. But there's so many. I mean, there's so much you can learn about it. But, being that early, I would focus on, getting the routine down, getting a nutrition program down, whether it's hire a nutritionist or a trainer, someone that can give you the guidance and see how your body reacts. Give yourself 6 months. Take everything 6 months at a time. Once you're, we have different levels. So you're a beginner, intermediate, and advanced. I think anyone training after a year is more of an advanced trainer, right? I think that you now, as long as you're consistent with it, you find that rhythm, and you make the adjustments. Find out what exercises work well for you, what rep ranges, but more importantly, what kind of foods you're able to monitor. And meal prepping is huge; it's important. So that means preparing food ahead of time, not just eating once or twice a day, and it's going to help with everything, with all your progression. You're in attendance at all the Arnolds and the Olympia still, right? Are you a judge? How does it work? No, I come out as like as a guest. Like when the Olympia 3 years ago, like I was the ambassador for the Olympia, so like the face. But a lot of times I'm doing meet and greets or I'm promoting. So I'm standing as part of the production and behind the scenes stuff, but also more of like I'm there shaking hands, taking pictures. Giving people advice. I'm present at most of the events here in Las Vegas and a lot, worldwide. I mean, my schedule's tapped out at this point. I'm booked all the way through June or July.
That's incredible.
Every weekend.
Can you talk about one of your mentees, Phil Heath? How'd you discover him? What made him different from other people and you caused it to help him out?
Yeah, it's funny. I met Phil Heath at a show in Denver. I was a guest poser. I think it was around 2003, and I saw this kid with these crazy arms, and he had just come off playing Division I basketball at the University of Denver, and he had a dream to be a bodybuilder. And from him, I sat and we had dinner at Cheesecake Factory that evening, and he wanted to compete. He was financially strapped a little bit. He was working as a trainer at Bally's, and next thing you know, I said, "Listen, I can help you." Got him a contract by the next Monday, and he was paid to be a bodybuilder through the Weider organization. And next thing you know, he's moving his way up through the ranks, and never thought he'd come up and challenge and beat me, which he did. But we became super close. Still to this day, we speak pretty frequently, and he's left a legacy, 7-time Mr. Olympia.
Incredible, yeah.
And but he's one of these guys that playing Division I basketball. He's only 5'9".
I asked him the other day. I was like, "You want to go hoop?" He's like, "I can't hoop now."
No,
He's like, "I can't do it
I think
anymore."
he could, but he played with some of the greats.
Yeah.
Jamal Crawford and these kind of people.
Yeah.
He played with all these guys, and they grew up in Seattle together, right?
Oh, that's right. He is from Seattle.
Yeah,
that's right.
Originally. So he's just, he's probably, I would say, the most genetically gifted.
Yes.
I mean, for him, I remember looking at pictures when he was playing basketball, and he had the crazy triceps, and I mean, his arms are some of the best you've ever seen, right? And he's very articulate. He's, he plays the piano. You should ask him about that.
I
actually.
will.
And he's just, he's definitely left a great mark on bodybuilding. But it was great to be able to pass the torch to him. And he was able to win more than me, obviously. So it's pretty amazing.
It is amazing because you guys understand your physiques make you somewhat intimidating to people who don't know anything about bodybuilding. And you're probably the nicest guys I've ever met.
Yeah.
All of the professional guys I met. It's the bouncers at the nightclubs who aren't that nice. It's that you guys are just the nicest dudes I've ever met.
Well, I mean, remember, we're not trying to intimidate people a
Right.
lot of times. I mean, that's the one thing. I never. The only time I wanted to be bigger to intimidate was when I wanted to be a cop, right?
Yeah.
Or a prison guard, because you're dealing with people that you need to intimidate. But I slowly realized I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be more of a bodybuilder and be a showman and leave a legacy like I kind of hope I do.
Someone should shoot a movie and hire you to be a prison guard. I think you'd be perfect. I can't even imagine it'd be better.
Yeah.
It'd be amazing, man.
We always have to play the muscle roles,
Yeah. Oh, you've been in some movies?
No. I've gotten approached for, I was actually doing the script for Hercules, which The Rock did.
Yeah.
I was presented that in 2009.
Yeah.
And, I met with Stan Lee at the time, and we wanted to create this character, and it just never really took off. We had a budget, and it just kept knocked down. But I was, on top of the world in bodybuilding, making a fortune at the time. So I just stayed with it and just focused on the bodybuilding. And, it's the most common question I get is, how come you never did the films? It wasn't one of those things I necessarily wanted to pursue.
Right. That's incredible, man. I can't even imagine the network, just from not only the success, but the network. And then that leading also, like you said before about the podcast, do you have any big guests set up for the podcast?
Well, we have Branch Warren, who finished second to me in 2009. He was a teenage body. He's coming on Friday. But not... I mean, we've got a lot of fitness people, but I definitely, I'm interested in getting some financial people on there because I feel that's a topic. So I know you're kind of from that world, which is kind of cool.
Funny that you mentioned that. So Tom Sosnoff, who I interviewed before,
which was interesting.
You watched that one, okay?
Course,
So he's been he played poker with Michael Jordan for 15 years. He's actually here. His birthday, happy birthday, Tom! His birthday's on Friday. He's coming out to play at Shadow Creek with Tony Batista and a bunch of other guys. But I would love to introduce you. Also, Tony Batista's coming on, and I don't know if you know Dylan Radigan from Fast Money from MSNBC. He's one of the hosts from there. He's going to be coming on the show too. But yeah, I'd love, dude. Well, send them your way.
Yeah, I like the stories how they had these little hidden poker games or whatever, right?
Yeah, they were. And Michael Jordan's like, someday I want to make.
Showed up, but that was before he became really huge, right?
Yeah,
that was when he was fairly new. He didn't know a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, also you have to understand these guys are sitting in the front row.
Yeah.
This Chicago, they're the options and futures market. That is what was carrying Chicago. That's why Chicago exists, is because of the trading markets there. And so because of that. He gets in touch with these guys. They're really wealthy. He wants to be wealthy too, and so he just kind of schmoozes with them for years and years and years. But it's a really, really interesting story.
But the ticket prices weren't much then, were they?
No, did you hear him talking about it? It was like nothing.
Crazy,
yeah, Jules. I'm friends with Jules too, and it's so funny listening to Jules talk about how cheap everything was because Chicago was terrible. They were horrible back then. And then watching them play and then playing basketball. Then the one time they came to Vegas and played here, and it was just those stories are pretty amazing. But yeah, Tom is the super humble guy. If you messaged him right now, he would write you back within 24 hours, and the man has sold 3 brokerages for $2.1 billion. It's crazy. When part of, I have my own mentoring program, and I answer every single message personally, and part of that was from Tom. Also, my program is based on what Tom taught me he has a financial channel. Every 15 minutes, there has to be a takeaway. So that's what I do. Every 15 minutes on my program, there has to be a takeaway.
So how many times have you had him on? Just one time?
Just once, yeah.
Okay.
This is going to be episode 35 for me. So I've only had him once. But yeah, I do.
Yeah, I'm on 26, I think, is what I'm on for Cutler Cast.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I watched it. I like the production. You said you're in a warehouse somewhere.
Yeah, I have a little office space, but I'm very close to here, and so I'm in this neighborhood. I live more up north, but It's kind of like I have my warehouse in the back, and I do some merchandising out of there. So
yeah, financial people, you should definitely get them on. It's a very interesting thing. A lot of my audience gets confused when one day I have a porn star and the next day I have a billionaire. But I'm just trying to be curious. You know, like Joe Rogan is into Navy SEALs and he's into
MMA.
Yeah, MMA guys, and I like those. I like that stuff too. But I have more of a background in physics because of college, and so I want to have physicists on and people like that. And like I said, your problem eating is one thing we didn't mention: you can't overtrain if you eat enough.
I don't think you can. Yeah, and sleep.
Eat and sleep enough. That again, this is a thermodynamics issue. If I continue to bring energy into the system, I can keep going, and I'm never going to overtrain.
I think yeah. I mean, listen, as you get to a certain age, definitely your recovery does slow down.
Yeah.
Right. That's one thing age-wise. What's the ideal age for a bodybuilder? You know, they say you're fully matured until you're in your mid to late 30s.
Yeah.
I quit at 40.
Yeah.
Ronnie Coleman quit at 43. Dexter Jackson went till he was 52.
Wow.
You know, Phil Heath quit when he was 40. So, you know, we all have our age brackets. Lee Haney retired at 30. Arnold retired at 27 or 28, but he got into films. And I mean, everyone has different genetics for how long they can go. But, you know, you asked, like, how do you determine that? Listen, you're going to keep going until you can't go any further.
Ask Tom Brady.
Yeah.
He was done.
Yeah.
Then he went out there and he was like,
it's funny, like, I mean, I don't know if he really announced it. I didn't really follow that media that much, but all of a sudden someone told me, he's coming back, you know. But hey, if you're still on top, why would you change it?
He is, there's an incredible video. It's on TikTok. He is having a conversation with Tim and his kids, and he's talking to Cristiano Ronaldo. They're on
I just saw a video of them shaking hands on the field.
A soccer pitch.
Yeah.
Cristiano Ronaldo looks at him and he goes, "You're done, right?" And he goes, "I don't know." That was the whole video. And then later on, he announces that he didn't retire. I mean, just that's pretty crazy. He and I are about like 6 months apart. Like he's my age. And so when I see that, when I wake up in the morning, I'm like, is this, you know, getting beat up? And I didn't play professional football for 20 years. That's rough.
Yeah, you know, Bledsoe, I was a big Bledsoe fan.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, he got hurt, and then Tom stepped up. I'm from New England.
Yeah, for sure.
So for me, I was kind of like, who is this chump, you know, coming up? And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, he took over, and Bledsoe was gone, and next thing you know is Brady, you know, because, listen, he wasn't drafted. Like, it just goes to show. It's, like, similar to me and Ronnie, where, like, we were at the last of the pack. It wasn't like Phil Heath got third at his first Olympia.
Yeah.
So he was great from the beginning. Like, you work in levels, right? And now look at, he's the greatest quarterback ever to live.
Seven championships. I remember, was it Mo Lewis that hit Bledsoe? I watched that game when he got hit and got taken out.
I forget what it was, but
knocked the crap out of him.
You know, we were big Bledsoe fans.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you know what? When he came to Dallas, we thought he was going to save the franchise, but that didn't work out. That they got Romo and everything changed.
So you're a Dallas Cowboys
fan. I'm from East Dallas, man.
It's America's team.
America's team. Don't you forget that. Don't you forget that. Awesome. And congratulations to Jerry Jones and his new kid. Sorry, it's an inside joke. Just found out he has another daughter. All right, so awesome, man. This has been great. I can't thank you enough. Thank you for coming out here. If there's anything you need me to do for you, let me know. We have a bunch of stuff coming up. I want to check out some more of your pageant, some more of the competitions that you're doing. I'm just learning about this. I've had a crash course in the last 48 hours about a bunch of different stuff. So I just want to say thank you for coming out, man. Is there anything else you have coming up?
No, maybe we'll get you on the stage.
On the stage, bro. Are you talking about?
We get the board shorts. You know, you don't have to put on the speedos. You know,
talking about 500 milligrams. Talking about 2,000 milligrams to get me on stage. It's going to be a little while. Yeah, man. But I appreciate that, man. Awesome.
So you're back at the pool. So can I get an invitation to your big event?
Are you kidding me? Okay, so I can't announce it because I think Jason Strauss will get mad at me. But there's a huge bikini competition. All I'm going to say is the biggest bikini competition in the world will be at Wet Republic this summer. I will be the host. I can't say the name of it is, but just think of the biggest name you could possibly think for a bikini competition. That's who's going to be hosting it. We have probably 400 competitors. This will be the biggest one in the world, and they've asked me to help be the recruiter. So I'm super excited to do that. You can come be a judge any week you want.
You're great at the recruiting.
You
get a lot of connects.
Yes, it's like I'm like an NFL scout, but for bikini models. Any week you want, come be a judge, okay?
I appreciate
absolutely.
that,
we'd love to have you. Hey, guys, thank you so much for checking us out. Like, share, and subscribe. For those of you who are interested, like, again, we've been talking about networking here. If you guys are interested in learning more about what I do for networking, I have a Men of Action mentoring program. I would love for you guys to come on and check it out. We talk about entrepreneurship, leadership. We talk about event planning, evolutionary psychology, high-status social networking, and we talk about social media. If you're interested in any of that, please hit us up. I put the link down in the description where I'm going to put a link to his Cutler Cast, so you guys can make sure that you guys can check it out. Make sure you follow him on Instagram. Follow him on TikTok. His TikTok is fantastic. And guys, thank you so much. I cannot express enough how awesome the growth for this podcast has been in the last couple of weeks, or how many times I've gone to Miami or Dallas or Los Angeles and somebody comes up to me and I think they're going to be like, hey, dude, which way's the bathroom? And instead they're like, hey, I love your podcast. It's shocking. Anyway, thank you guys, and I will see you all next week.